Chapter 585. When Li Qianxue said this, there was not much accusation on her face. However, the mockery in his eyes was clear. Su Qinghui's face suddenly turned pale. Li Qianxue sneered, "You should remember what you have done, right?" There were some things that I could still remember clearly even though it had been more than 20 years. I'm sure your memory isn't that bad, right? Su Qinghui was speechless. Li Qianxue continued, "Su Qinghui, I used to be blind and all I wanted was your love. Only later did I realize how stupid I was. Because I overestimated myself, I gave you the opportunity to hurt me again and again. Even the chance to hurt my child. I'm telling you right now, it won't happen again. It won't happen again." Qianxue. "I didn't," he wanted to explain, but he swallowed his words under Li Qianxue's sharp gaze. Li Qianxue stared at Su Qinghui's face without any emotion. "You thought you said you loved me and you thought you regretted it. I have to forgive you? With you? Su Qinghui, who gave you the confidence and courage to say such shameless words. But I don't believe a single word you said, not a single punctuation. So you don't have to say anything." Qianxue. It wasn't that Su Qinghui hadn't expected to encounter such a situation. But when such a situation really happened, he really felt a strong sense of helplessness. "What do I have to do to make you forgive me?" "I'll never forgive you. I said forever." Li Qianxue didn't mind making it clearer. "No matter what you do or say, I won't believe a single word you say. Whatever you want, I won't give it to you. Su Qinghui. After the divorce, you and I will only be strangers. If you are willing, then we can part ways and live our own lives. But if you're not willing, or if you're still coveting something that you don't deserve, then you'll have to pay for it. So, you might be disappointed." "I didn't." Su Qinghui hurriedly explained, "Qianxue, what I said is true. My feelings for you are serious. I'm serious too." Li Qianxue interrupted him, and her gaze suddenly became extremely sharp. "I'm serious. Su Qinghui, don't do anything that you and I will regret. I'm not afraid to tell you that not only will my heart not soften because of your words, even your precious daughter will not be able to soften my heart in the slightest." "Precious daughter?" Surprise flashed across Su Qinghui's face. "You mean Peijin? What happened to her? Feeling heartache? Are you anxious?" Li Qianxue smiled, even though there was a hint of bitterness in the depths of her smile. After all, she was the daughter she had raised, but now she had become a tool to deal with Su Qinghui. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't shaken at all. But this was the only and fastest way to make Su Qinghui give up. "You probably don't know, right? Your daughter, Su Peijin. Yesterday, she cried and begged me to recognize her again and bring her back to the Su family. Don't you think it's ridiculous?" "Qianxue?" Su Qinghui's body shook. He stood there in a daze. Even though he had a disagreement with Su Peijin because of some things, she was still his beloved daughter for many years. "Are you upset? Su Qinghui, you deserve this. You're the one who hurt her. Do you know that when she begged me, she looked exactly the same as you just now? I should have recorded it and showed it to you. You father and daughter are really alike." "Qianxue, don't say any more." Su Qinghui's shoulders drooped, and he exuded a dejected aura. "Qianxue, Peijin, she is actually innocent. If possible, please don't hurt her." He had wronged not only Su Qingsang and Li Qianxue, but also Su Peijin. She was right. He shouldn't have given her such an identity and then cruelly thrown her down from a high place. He seemed to be a failure and had been doing wrong things. He had wronged too many people. "Su Qinghui, if you don't want me to hurt your precious daughter, then please stay away from me. Whether it was by chance or on purpose, I don't want to see you. To put it simply and directly. If possible, even if you see me in the future, please take a detour. Stay away from me, can you?" When Li Qianxue said this, she didn't forget to reveal an extremely proud smile. "Of course, if you don't want to, I don't mind doing something to Su Peijin. You know, I have the ability to. After all, she wants to be my daughter wholeheartedly. She loves me and cares about me, doesn't she? Qianxue, I beg you. Don't say any more. You won't. You're not that kind of person. Peijin, she's also your daughter." "She's not. My daughter is Su Qingsang. I hope you remember this." Li Qianxue took a step forward and glared at Su Qinghui. "Su Peijin is not my daughter. Let me tell you, even if I raised her for more than 20 years, even if she had a mother-daughter relationship with me for more than 20 years, it can't make up for the mistakes you've made and the sins you've committed. Do you think I'll show mercy to her for the sake of our mother-daughter relationship? You're wrong. I hate her as much as I treated her back then and how much I loved her back then. Because those were stolen by you shameless pair of father and daughter. You stole my daughter's original happiness, stole my daughter's original motherly love. Su Qinghui, I can tell you clearly that after I found out what you've done, I can no longer have the slightest mother-daughter relationship with Su Peixian. Because if I really still have feelings for her, then I can only do as you wish and give you another chance to play me in the palm of your hand. And I don't want to give you such a chance. She hated Su Peixian as much as she had treated her before. All of this was caused by Su Qinghui. Qianxue, I really didn't. Whether you did or didn't, I don't care anymore. Just treat it as if I'm a villain who gauges a gentleman's heart. Anyway, no matter what you say or do, you can't eliminate the hatred in my heart at all. So, don't waste your energy. Su Qinghui stood there without moving. He naturally knew how difficult this path was. But when he really walked on this path, he realized that it was much more difficult than he had imagined. Li Qianxue refused to believe his words. No matter what he said, she wouldn't believe him. Qianxue. Su Qinghui stood there without moving, his eyes filled with pain and regret. Li Qianxue was unmoved. She crossed her arms in front of her chest. She had long given up on Su Qinghui. Even if she felt a little sorry for Su Peixian and felt a little soft-hearted. But when she thought of the grievances Su Qingsang had suffered over the years, she suppressed these emotions. That was why she could be so cold when she faced Su Peixian yesterday. I'll say it again. If you continue to pester me, I'll go deal with Su Peixian. You know what I can do. I can do it. More importantly, Su Peixian was still attached to her. Even if she didn't do anything, it was enough to hurt her. She knew this and so did Su Qinghui. Okay, I'll go. Su Qinghui's shoulders drooped more and more, and his whole body revealed a sense of dejection. Qianxue, I'll go. I only hope that you won't hurt Su Peixian for the sake of the mother-daughter relationship over the past 20 years. Li Qianxue stood still, but her eyes became colder and colder. Don't hurt Su Peixian? Then he could let Su Peixian hurt Su Qingsang? With such a standard, he was indeed still thinking about the child of another woman. Su Qinghui, where on earth did you get the face to say that you love me? After Su Qinghui left, the room became quiet. Li Qianxue's figure was straight. She looked at an unknown point with an expressionless face. She didn't know what she was thinking, but her expression became a little ugly for a moment. But this ugly expression didn't last long. She used to be as gentle as water, but now she was as hard as a knife. She was right. Huo Jinyao looked at the documents in front of him with a faint smile on his face. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Huo Yifan had already entered the trap he had set. He was only one step away from completely taking the bait. When he signed the contract, it would be irrefutable evidence. At that time, he wanted to see how Grandpa would protect the second young master of the Huo family. President Huo, what else do you want to do next? You don't have to do anything next. Huo Jinyao smiled and put the document back in Yang Wenchang's hand. Just keep an eye on them and let their guard down. Then wait for them to sign the contract. Just put the contract in front of Grandpa. Yang Wenchang glanced at Huo Jinyao. He looked hesitant, as if he wanted to say something. Huo Jinyao seemed to understand what he wanted to say. He said calmly, "What? Do you think I'm too soft-hearted? Do you think I should directly hand the evidence to the board of directors after they sign the contract? Then Huo Yifan will never be able to make a comeback again? If that was really the case, Huo Yifan would have to leave Tianyu. He wouldn't be able to hold the position of vice president of Tianyu Group for long." Yang Wenchang was silent. That was indeed what he thought. Actually, I want to do that too. Huo Yifan looked at him with an indifferent expression. But Grandpa won't like it. Grandpa is old and he values relationships. He won't like to see brothers fighting each other. Yang Wenchang didn't say anything. Given old Master Huo's personality, it was indeed possible. Huo Jinyao really did that. He was afraid that old Master Huo would think that Huo Jinyao was too ruthless again. Just take it as a lesson to him. Huo Jinyao gave old Master Huo face. If he still doesn't know how to restrain himself, I won't be polite anymore. This time he's lucky. He only hoped that Huo Yifan wouldn't be too stupid. Did he really think that he could do whatever he wanted without any scruples? If that was the case, he really couldn't blame him for being impolite. Yang Wenchang nodded and thought of something else. By the way, our company's anniversary celebration is coming up. The plan for this event has already been released. President Huo, take a look at this plan. Anniversary celebration? Huo Jinyao thought that Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui were both in Rong City. Although he didn't want to interfere in the matter between Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue for Su Qingsang's sake, he could give Su Qinghui a little convenience. Prepare 2 VIP invitations. I'll need them when the time comes. Yes. As for the process, you don't have to look at it in detail. It's about the same as in previous years. After Hu Jingyao asked Yang Wenchang to leave, he suddenly thought of something. Since Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue would come to the anniversary celebration, Hu Yifan would definitely bring Su Peijian along. If that was the case, there would be a good show to watch. In the boutique, Su Qingsang lowered her head and looked at herself. Then she looked at Li Qianxue. Mom, this one? No, try on that one again. Su Qingsang held the dress and felt a little helpless. Mom, I've tried on 7 or 8. Of course you have to try it out. You're going to attend the anniversary celebration of Tianyu Group. It can be considered your first official appearance since you came to Rong City. Of course you have to look perfect. As she spoke, she placed a white dress in Su Qingsang's hand. Be good, go and try on this one too. Su Qingsang took the dress and glanced at Hu Jinyao, who had been standing by the side. It was all his fault. He said that he wanted to try on dresses today, but it had only been more than an hour and he still hadn't decided. Hu Jinyao met Su Qingsang's somewhat reproachful gaze and smiled lightly. All right, you should listen to Mom. Su Qingsang had no choice but to take the dress and go in again. Li Qianxue turned around and glanced at Hu Jinyao with a rare look of admiration in her eyes. Good patience. It's my duty. Hu Jinyao accepted Li Qianxue's praise generously. It's my honor to accompany 2 beautiful women. Mom, aren't you going to try it on? Qingsang is the main character. Pick out her dress first. That's good too. Mom, you'll wear a dress of the same color as Qingsang. You'll look like a pair of beautiful sisters. This person really knew how to talk. Li Qianxue glanced at Hu Jinyao. You don't have to flatter me. As long as you treat Qingsang well, it's enough for me. Mom, you've really wronged me. I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, ask someone else. Who would believe that you can have a daughter as old as Qingsang? Li Qianxue really laughed now. She looked at Hu Jinyao with a rare look of satisfaction in her eyes. Su Qingsang came out in the white dress. She was already exhausted to the bone. Li Qianxue took a step back, looked up and down, and shook her head. Change it. This one isn't as good as the golden one just now. Come, try this one on again. Mom. Su Qingsang couldn't take it anymore. She looked at Hu Jinyao with a hint of resentment. Hu Jinyao smiled and took the dress from Li Qianxue's hands. He walked up to Su Qingsang. This is the last one. After you try it on, we'll help your mom pick out the dress together. He winked at Su Qingsang and Su Qingsang immediately understood what he meant. She took the dress from his hands helplessly. She made a face at him and went back into the fitting room. The winking and small looks between the two of them didn't escape Li Qianxue's eyes. She saw it and felt very gratified. No matter what, she was very happy that her daughter and son-in-law had a good relationship. With Hu Jinyao's protection, Su Qingsang wouldn't be like her for the rest of her life. When Hu Yifan entered the door, he smelled a faint smell of alcohol in the room. He took off his suit jacket and put it aside. When he entered the door, he found Su Peijian sitting on the sofa in the living room. There were a few bottles of red wine in front of her. One of them had been opened and she had drunk most of it. At this time, Su Peijian was holding a wine glass in her hand and leaning on the sofa. She gently shook the glass in her hand. Her slightly narrowed eyes revealed a hint of confusion. When she saw him enter the door, she didn't say a word. She just picked up the wine and took a sip. Isn't it boring to drink alone? Hu Yifan walked up and sat down next to her. He reached out and grabbed the glass in her hand, then poured himself a glass. Why didn't you wait for me to drink? Wait for you for what? Su Peijian glanced at him. You're going to sign a contract with the other company, aren't you? Shouldn't you be keeping an eye on them during this period of time? Why are you back so early today? You also said that you're going to sign a contract. Since you're going to sign a contract, it means that it's basically done. Su Peijian glanced at him. Her expression wasn't as smug as he appeared to be. Why do I feel that this matter is a little too smooth? Isn't it smooth? Hu Yifan put his arm around her waist. Look, with your intelligence and my resources, isn't it normal for it to be smooth? Su Peijian blinked at him and didn't ask any more questions. Instead, she took another glass from the side and poured herself a glass of wine. Hu Yifan looked at her actions and took a sip of wine. Before she picked up the glass, he leaned over, kissed her lips, and drank the wine. Su Peijian didn't like his actions. After being forced to drink the wine, she pushed him away. What's wrong? Are you in a bad mood? Su Peijian was indeed in a bad mood. She had been at Hu Yifan's place for 2 days. However, she didn't receive another call from Xiang Kaiping. Li Qianxue didn't call her, and neither did Xiang Kaiping. Her two mothers seemed to have abandoned her. She felt uncomfortable in her heart. There was a kind of pain that made it hard to breathe. She used to think that Li Qianxue would never give up on her, but she was wrong. Later she thought that Xiang Kaiping would never give up on her, but she was wrong again. Now, because of a small action of hers, the two mothers didn't want her anymore. Su Peijian thought about how well Xiang Kaiping had been treating her in the past 5 months. She thought that she wouldn't care. However, when she really lost her, she realized that she wasn't as calm as she thought. It turned out that she still had expectations for Xiang Kaiping. It turned out that she wasn't as indifferent to Xiang Kaiping as she appeared to be. Now that she knew, what was the use of it? Xiang Kaiping didn't want her anymore. What happened? Nothing. Su Peijian shook her head. She didn't want to talk about these things. Keep an eye on the cooperation. I have a feeling that He Jingyao isn't as simple as you think. Don't worry. I heard that his mother-in-law is here. He didn't even go to work today. He went to accompany his mother-in-law. I believe that he won't be able to cause any trouble with his behavior. Mother-in-law? Wasn't it Li Qianxue? Su Peijian's mood became more and more gloomy. He Jingyao knew how to be a good person. He put aside his work time to accompany Li Qianxue. Was he helping Su Qingsang to please Li Qianxue? As soon as this thought came to her, Su Peijian dispelled the idea that He Jingyao might have suspected her and Hu Yifan. With He Jingyao's current state, there was probably nothing that could compare to Su Qingsang, right? Speaking of which, she was about to marry Hu Yifan. She didn't believe that He Jingyao could really bear it. You seemed very unhappy when you heard that He Jingyao went to accompany his mother-in-law? Hu Yifan suddenly approached Su Peijian. Speaking of which, his mother-in-law seems to be your former mother, right? The sarcasm in Hu Yifan's words made Su Peijian's expression change slightly. She sneered, took out the wineglass in his hand and drank it in one gulp. She looked up at him, her eyes cold. Yes. His mother-in-law used to be my mother. So what? If you think that I'm a pitiful, powerless, illegitimate daughter now, you can abandon me. I won't beg you to have me. Putting down the wineglass, Su Peijian stood up and was about to leave. Hu Yifan turned his wrist and pulled her into his arms. Look at you, getting angry after a few words? Who's against you? I love you more than anything. Well, Su Peijian sat on his lap and looked at the smile on his face. You said you love me? What else? Hu Yifan kissed her lips. If I didn't love you, why would I take the risk and use my position in Tianyu Group to play such a big game with you? Su Peijian didn't completely believe Hu Yifan's words. Of course, half of the reason why he was willing to play such a big game was because of her. However, she didn't know the other half of the reason. It was because he didn't want to be under He Jingyao for the rest of his life. He was ambitious and everything he did was for himself. You don't seem to believe me? Hu Yifan leaned over and firmly held her waist in his arms. It seems that I have to do something to make you believe me. What can you do? Su Peijian didn't think that Hu Yifan could get married with her now. It's the anniversary celebration of Tianyu Group in 2 days. How about you be my female companion? He whispered into her ear, speaking of which, I've never brought a female companion other than my secretary to the anniversary celebration. You're the first. Are you honored? The anniversary celebration of Tianyu Group was not a small matter. Not only old Master Hua, but the Hua family also had business partners. All the employees who had worked for Tianyu Group would be there. It could be said that except for those who were on duty, most of them would be present. He was willing to bring Su Peijian to the anniversary celebration, which was another kind of affirmation of her identity. It was twice as formal as meeting her parents. Anniversary celebration? Su Peijian narrowed her eyes. He Jingyao is working with the Li family, so his mother-in-law should be here too, right? She should be. Hu Yifan looked at Su Peijian's calculating eyes and suddenly smiled. What? What did you think of? Nothing, I'll go. Li Qianxue thought so little of her. She thought that she had a motive for getting close to Hu Yifan. Then she would let Li Qianxue take a good look. Even if she didn't have the Su family and the Li family as her backing, she could still do well. Chapter 586. I like that you're so smart. Su Peijian was still daydreaming. Hu Yifan's hand had already reached into her clothes. Don't worry. I'll have someone come over tomorrow to measure you and order a dress. I promise you'll be in the limelight on the anniversary. Really? Su Peijian put her hand on his shoulder and leaned close to his cheek. If that's the case, I really have to thank you first. Okay. You can start now and express your gratitude. Hu Yifan's hand tightened and Su Peijian's clothes were torn in half. Su Peijian glared at him. This man could be very perverted sometimes. He could take it off easily, but he liked to tear it. Pervert. Don't you like me because I'm a pervert? Hui Yifan smiled. Don't worry. I'll make you like me even more. Su Peijian put her arms around his neck and said seductively, Really? Then prove it to me. My pleasure. On the sofa in the living room the two of them rolled together. At that moment, Su Qingsang and Li Qianxue were all thrown to the back of her mind. She only needed to firmly grasp Hui Yifan's heart to let them know. Su Peijian also had the right to be on equal footing with them. Before Su Qinghui came, he had planned to call Su Peijian in addition to Su Qingsang. He wanted to ask her how she was doing recently. Especially after parting on bad terms with Li Qianxue, he wanted to know how Su Peijian was doing recently. It had nothing to do with anything else. After so many years of caring for her, he was used to thinking about his daughter. However, to his disappointment, Su Peijian didn't answer his call. He called Su Peijian several times but she didn't answer. Su Qinghui could have called Xiang Kaiping directly. But if he did that, something else might happen. After thinking about it, Su Qinghui could only send Su Peijian a message, telling her that he had come to Rong City and that he wanted to see her if possible. Unfortunately, Su Peijian still didn't reply. Su Qinghui knew that he probably wouldn't be able to see Su Peijian this time. If she wasn't willing to see him, given her personality, she definitely wouldn't pick up his call. After finishing his work, Su Qinghui was about to book a plane ticket back to Lin City when he received Su Qingsang's call. She told him that he had been invited to Tianyu Group's anniversary celebration next week. Anyway, he was also in Rong City. If he went to attend, he could also get to know some people in Rong City's business circle, which would also be helpful to him. Su Qinghui, whose company had just started to make progress, certainly wouldn't let go of this opportunity. What made him even happier was that Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao were willing to invite him. This made him very happy. Amidst his happiness, he thought of Su Peijian. After the anniversary celebration, he would visit her again. Su Qinghui didn't expect to see Su Peijian on such an occasion. Tianyu Group's anniversary celebrations were bigger and bigger every year. It was getting more and more lively every year. This year was no exception. Tianyu chose the largest convention center in Rong City as the venue. It was also the largest and most functional one. The entire center was bustling with noise and excitement today. The first and second floors of the convention center were divided into two parts. One was downstairs, where the Tianyu Group's own employees came to participate. They could hold all kinds of activities here, such as raffles and buffets. The other part was upstairs, where the Tianyu Group's higher-ups, directors, and all the business partners who worked with the Tianyu Group were, including Hu Jinyao's childhood friends Tang Mohan, Wan Xianying, Cheng Xianyun, and Li Junxing, who happened to have time this time, also came. When they arrived, the other elders of the Hua family, Old Master Hua, Hua Yangyuan, Hua Mingguang, Hua Mingliang, Nian Chuanya, and Hua Mingmei all came. As the hosts, Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang hadn't arrived yet. Old Master Hua was talking to Hua Yangyuan when he saw Hu Jinyao coming in from afar. Of course, Hu Jinyao didn't come alone. He held Su Qingsang's hand by his side. Su Qingsang finally decided on the gown today after Li Qianshue's repeated efforts that day. The light gold fabric was tailored to fit her body. The biggest advantage of this gown was that it was layered. The chiffon fabric underneath was layered. There was a layer of gauze on the surface and another layer on the inside. The outer layer of gauze was light, and the patterns embroidered on the inner layer of gauze could be faintly seen. It was faintly discernible, but it was more charming than being completely visible. The neckline design revealed the perfect lines of Su Qingsang's shoulders. It matched with the pair of golden high heels on her feet. His entire person seemed to have a kind of floating noble aura. In order to match her, although Hu Jinyao's gown was dark, he wore a golden tie today. The dark patterns of the cufflinks also complemented Su Qingsang's gown. The two of them attracted the attention of most of the people present as soon as they entered the room. Whether it was these business partners, the directors of Tianyu Group, or the higher-ups, they all knew Hu Jinyao. But many people still didn't know Su Qingsang. Now that they saw her standing together with Hu Jinyao, what else could they not understand? The Su Qingsang in front of them was the legendary wife of the president. The woman who was carefully protected by Hu Jinyao. Outside the banquet hall, Li Qianxue wasn't in a hurry to go in. Just now, Hu Jinyao asked her to go in with him, but she refused. She would never let Su Qingsang miss such a chance to be in the limelight. Now was the moment that belonged to her daughter. She hoped that Su Qingsang would be the brightest one in the entire venue. And she also believed that the effect brought about by her own judgment and Su Qingsang's own temperament would definitely shock the entire venue. Sure enough, it didn't take long for exclamations and applause to be heard from inside. Li Qianxue smiled and picked up the bag in her hand. Just as she was about to go in, she didn't expect to see a person at the door who shouldn't have been there. Su Qinghui. Why was he here? When Li Qianxue saw Su Qinghui, her expression suddenly turned ugly. Especially when she saw the clothes he was wearing, her expression became even uglier. The color of my gown is the color of your tie. This was a popular way to show your love in a subtle way. Today was the anniversary of Tianyu Group. Li Qianxue chose a golden gown for Su Qingsang, which was dignified and elegant. The color he chose for himself was dark red. It was a happy day for the other party, so it was also very appropriate for her to wear red. The dark red long qipao embroidered with patterns looked very appropriate on her, especially when Li Qianxue was so young. The qipao could only make her look more elegant and exquisite. But it didn't include letting her see that Su Qinghui was wearing a Chinese tunic suit of the same color as her. He stood in front of her in an extremely elegant manner. When he saw the smile on her face, a hint of surprise flashed across his face. Especially when he saw her qipao, the smile on his face became even more obvious. Su Qinghui. You, Qianxue, don't we have a tacit understanding? Su Qinghui seemed to know what she wanted to say and interrupted her. For him, if Li Qianxue's understanding of him was 10 points, then his understanding of Li Qianxue was at least 30 to 40 points. On such a day, Li Qianxue would definitely wear a relatively festive dress. But she had never liked bright red. Dark red was a very good choice. It was elegant and dignified but also festive. All the celebrities who came and went liked to wear dresses, but Li Qianxue actually liked qipaos. This was something he also knew. Therefore, it was most suitable for him to wear a Chinese tunic suit to face her. And now that he saw Li Qianxue, he knew that he had made the right bet. Wu Jinyao. Wu Jinyao, you're really something. He actually didn't mention a word. He actually invited Su Qinghui. If Li Qianxue had known, she definitely wouldn't have come. Of course, she also knew that this matter couldn't be completely blamed on Hu Jinyao. It would be strange if Su Qingsang didn't know. But now she didn't want to blame her daughter. She only wanted to scold Hu Jinyao. Don't blame Hu Jinyao. No matter what, I'm his father-in-law. Isn't it only right for him to invite me? After Su Qinghui received Su Qingsang's call, he knew that Li Qianxue would also come to this banquet. Although Su Qingsang's tone didn't say it explicitly, it was already quite obvious. This was also the reason why he tried his best to guess what Li Qianxue would wear. Fortunately, he guessed correctly. It's only right. Of course it's only right. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qinghui, her expression cold and mocking. Speaking of which, Su Qinghui, I really have to admire you. You treated Qingsang like that, but you can still make her help you like this. You're becoming more and more good at buying people's hearts. Qianxue, don't talk about Qingsang like that. I didn't buy her off. I just let her see my sincerity. Sincerity? Su Qinghui would also have sincerity? Yes, sincerity towards Xiang Kaiping. Li Qianxue didn't want to talk to Su Qinghui, so she walked inside. No matter what Su Qinghui was wearing, it had nothing to do with her. She didn't come today for Su Qinghui. However, Su Qinghui walked to her side and reached out his hand to her. Qianxue, let's go in together. In your dreams. Li Qianxue took a step back, and her suppressed voice revealed a hint of anger. Let me tell you, we're already divorced. Please stay away from me. I know we're already divorced. But now this is the Hua family's home court, the home court of Tianyu Group. You don't want others to know that the wife of the president of Tianyu Group doesn't have a good relationship with her parents, do you? So what? Li Qianxue glared at him coldly. Old Master Hua knows very well about my divorce with you. He also knows very well about Qingsang's background. I really don't think there's a need for me to hide it in front of others. As for you, Su Qinghui, I really don't like your unscrupulous behavior. After saying this, she completely ignored Su Qinghui and went straight into the venue. Su Qinghui looked at her graceful figure, and a hint of bitterness appeared on his face. He didn't expect that even if he brought Su Qingsang out, Li Qianxue wouldn't be soft-hearted at all. Thinking about it, he was really discouraged. When Li Qianxue entered the banquet hall, although it didn't cause as much of a stir as Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao, it was enough to leave a deep impression. She was charming but not fierce. She had an imposing manner, a good look, a good figure, and a good temperament. Some people who didn't know who she was had already begun to secretly ask about her. Lu Tongjia had been in a bad mood these days. After the fight with Hu Jinyao because of Zhang Yichen, she hadn't been in a good mood for a while. She kept wondering if she was wrong. But no one could tell her the answer. There were several times when she wanted to ask Hu Mingguang if she had done something wrong back then. But she didn't have the courage. Not everyone had the courage to face the mistakes they had made and the misunderstandings they had had. Lu Tongjiao was the same. She could only remind herself over and over again that she was not wrong. She was not wrong at all. It was Hu Jingyao who killed Jin Kai and Wu Shuang. It was all Hu Jingyao's fault. It seemed that only by doing this could she find some comfort. It seemed that only by doing this could she feel a little better. Until she saw Hu Jingyao with her own eyes. She saw Su Qingsang come in with Hu Jingyao just now. Putting aside her dislike for Su Qingsang, she had to admit that Su Qingsang and Hu Jingyao were indeed very compatible in appearance. Su Qingsang and Hu Jingyao were a perfect match in terms of appearance. One was tall and handsome and the other was delicate and pretty. Ever since she married into the Hua family, Su Qingsang had also undergone some fundamental changes. She began to act more elegantly and calmly. Just like now, she was wearing a golden dress which was very suitable for her. When she came in with Hu Jingyao, there was a faint smile in her eyes. The two of them held each other's hands tightly. Needless to say, it was obvious that they were very close to each other. Such a scene was a little harsh in Lu Tongjia's eyes. Stop being dirty. Only Hu Jingyao believed in her innocence. Now, looking at the two of them showing off their love, she only felt suffocated. She had already felt a little remorseful, but now she felt a little less. All that was left was dissatisfaction with Su Qingsang. She had clearly behaved inappropriately, but Hu Jingyao protected her wholeheartedly. He was blind and couldn't see it. Such a woman, had also married into the Hua family. When she saw Li Qianxue, who was wearing a dark red dress and slowly walking in, Lu Tongjia's face darkened even more. It was nothing for Hu Jingyao to invite Li Qianxue. However, Li Qianxue was Su Qingsang's mother, and he didn't even greet her. This was already extremely disrespectful. More importantly, Li Qianxue came to Rong City, but she didn't visit the Hua family first. What was this? Did she not take the Hua family seriously? If that was the case, what did she mean by appearing now? It wasn't that Li Qianxue didn't notice the curious and inquisitive gazes of the people around her. However, she couldn't care about other people now. She quietly walked in the direction of old Master Hua. Then she stood about a meter in front of him. Hu Jingyao and Su Qingsang had just greeted old Master Hua and the other elders. At this moment they were standing to the side and chatting with Hu Yangyuan and the other two elders. When she saw Li Qianxue come in, Su Qingsang smiled at her and gave her a reassuring look before standing to the side. Old Master. Congratulations. Niece, you're here? Old Master Hua had heard Hu Jingyao mention that Li Qianxue had come to Rong City before. Why didn't Brother Li come with you? My father stayed in Lin City to take care of things. Li Qianxue said half jokingly and half seriously. Or, does the old master not want to see me? How could that be? You don't know how happy I'm that you're here, niece? Come, let me introduce you. Before old Master Hua could finish his sentence, he saw another person come in. This time it was Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui was the same as Li Qianxue. When he came in, he also attracted a lot of attention. The man who was almost 50 years old had a mature charm. He had the maturity and steadiness that had accumulated over time, and his appearance was elegant. Most importantly, after the divorce, Su Qinghui was more calm and composed than before. The sharpness and obsession that he once had disappeared, and he looked very different from before. The dark patterned Chinese tunic suit made him look even more elegant and handsome. People would believe it if they said that he was less than 40 years old. Step by step, he walked steadily to old Master Hua. Hello. You're old Master Hua Yangping, right? I am, and you are? Just by looking at Su Qinghui's appearance, old Master Hua had already guessed who he was. I'm Su Qinghui, Qingsang's father. Su Qinghui reached out his hand to old Master Hua. His expression was calm and apologetic. I'm sorry. When Qingsang and Jinyao returned to Rong City, I happened to have some things to deal with, so I didn't come to visit the Hua family immediately. I'm sorry. He openly admitted his mistake, and the expression on his face was sincere and calm. Old Master Hua reached out and shook hands with him. In-law, you're welcome. It's all a small matter. We're not that polite people. That's because old Master Hua is magnanimous. He doesn't care about us juniors. As Su Qinghui spoke, he took out a small box from his pocket. It's my first time meeting you, so I didn't prepare anything. I prepared a gift in a hurry. I hope you'll like it. You're welcome, you're welcome. Old Master Hua looked at Su Qinghui and didn't refuse his gift. His gaze fell on Li Qianxue and then looked at Su Qinghui. His eyes looked over and they were very shrewd. Nephew, did you come with niece? The way they addressed each other as eldest niece and eldest nephew was very intimate. Invisibly, the distance between the two sides was shortened a lot. Oh, yes. Two different voices sounded at the same time. Old Master Hua looked at Su Qinghui and then at Li Qianxue. He heard that they were divorced. It turned out that the two of them appeared one after the other, and they were wearing the same color gowns, so he thought, "Old Master, I still have something to say to Qing Sang. Excuse me for a moment." It wasn't that Li Qianxue didn't want to give Old Master Hua face, but her disgust for Su Qinghui had overwhelmed everything else. She glanced at Su Qinghui coldly, and then bowed to Old Master Hua with great respect. "Old Master, I'll talk to you later." She turned around and walked in Su Qingsang's direction. Before she left, she didn't even look at Su Qinghui out of the corner of her eye. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianshue's back and smiled bitterly. Li Qianxue actually didn't give him face at all. She didn't even want to pretend in front of outsiders. "Nephew." Old Master Hua's words brought Su Qinghui back to his senses. He looked at Old Master Hua very gently. "Old Master, I'm sorry." Old Master Hua waved his hand. "It's not that I'm sorry. Every family has its own difficulties. I understand. But you're here today. It's just in time. I have something to talk to you about." Talk to him? Su Qinghui was a little confused. What did he want to talk to him about? Speaking of which, nephew is a lucky man. His daughters are all more capable than the other. Su Qinghui stood there. For a moment he didn't quite understand what Old Master Hua meant. Old Master? It's a little too early to talk about this matter now. But I think since our children have come this far, it's naturally a matter of time. Naturally, success will follow when the conditions are right, don't you think so? Come this far? Which step was this step? Su Qinghui didn't quite understand and was about to ask. On the other side, there was another commotion at the entrance of the venue. Someone came in. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao had just greeted a few elders of the Hua family. The two of them didn't have time to catch their breath. Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue came in. She saw that Li Qianxue didn't give Su Qinghui any face. She directly left him and walked towards her. The bosses of two business partners happened to come over at this time to greet Hua Jinyao. After greeting them, Hua Jinyao introduced Su Qingsang to them. Su Qingsang greeted him with a smile that was appropriate for the occasion. Li Qianxue walked over at this time. "Let me introduce you. This is the CEO of the Li Corporation in Lin City, Ms. Li Qianxue. She's also my mother-in-law." Hua Jinyao generously introduced Li Qianxue to some business partners. He also roughly told her about the other party's identity and the type of business the company operated. He was so polite. Li Qianxue originally wanted to blame him for calling Su Qinghui over but not informing her, but she couldn't say anything else. Like Su Qingsang at such a time, she could only greet these people with a smile on her face. After a round, she received several business cards. Some of them might indeed be able to form a cooperative relationship with the Li Corporation in the future. She accepted Hua Jinyao's favor, so it was naturally not good for her to find him to settle the score with Su Qinghui. However, when there was no one around, she gave Su Qingsang a look. The matter between her and Su Qinghui would naturally be handled by their elders. If Su Qingsang wanted to help Su Qinghui, she couldn't object, but she would indeed be very disappointed. Su Qingsang seemed to know what she was thinking and stepped forward to hold her arm. She had a flattering smile on her face. "Mom, I was wrong." She apologized in a low voice. Li Qianxue glanced at her reproachfully, but in the end she couldn't bear to blame her. At this time she also noticed the commotion at the entrance of the venue. She turned her head with Su Qingsang, and the mother and daughter saw the figure who came in at the same time. Li Qianxue and Su Qingsang frowned at the same time. The woman who came in slowly was none other than Su Peixian. They weren't the only ones who saw it. Su Qinghui also saw it. Chapter 587. The commotion at the entrance of the venue was obviously caused by Su Peixian. Speak of the devil. Naturally, Old Master Hua also saw Su Peixian, who came in with Hua Yifan. With a smile on his face, he looked at Su Qinghui warmly and teasingly. "Nephew, I'm afraid you came to Rong City because of Peixian, right?" "Because of Peixian? What happened to Peixian?" Su Qinghui still didn't understand the situation, so he didn't rush to answer. His eyes were fixed on Su Peixian. He didn't know Hua Yifan, who was standing next to Su Peixian, but that didn't affect the expression on Su Peixian's face. Su Peixian always knew what she wanted. Her facial features were bright and beautiful, completely different from Su Qingsang's. In contrast to Su Qingsang's golden dress, Su Peixian had chosen a very festive bright red dress. One-line collar design, narrow waist, long tail. Su Peijian, who entered the venue in heels that were nearly 10 centimeters high, was extremely ostentatious at this moment. Bright, beautiful, sexy. Everyone's gaze fell on her. It wasn't just because she was accompanied by Hui Yifan, the vice president of Tianyu Group. It was also because of the feeling she gave off. She held Hui Yifan's hand and walked step by step towards Old Master Hua. Hui Yifan held Su Peijian's hand with one hand and leaned close to her ear at the same time. I told you, I will make you the most dazzling existence today. Thank you. Su Peijian looked straight ahead, and the smile on her face became more and more meaningful. But I can do it without you. I like how confident you are. Hui Yifan smiled. As the two of them spoke, they walked through the crowd and stood in front of Old Master Hua. Grandpa Hua. Grandpa. Su Peijian was the first to greet them. The smile on her face was very friendly. I'm a little late. Grandpa Hua, please don't take offense. How could that be? Old Master Hua looked at Su Peijian, and the smile on his face didn't stop. Peijian, you're dressed up very well today. Very festive. Thank you for your compliment, Grandpa. Yifan had picked this suit. I didn't expect him to have such good taste. My foresight is naturally good. As Hui Yifan spoke, his eyes finally turned to Su Qinghui. Su Peijian also saw Su Qinghui. She smirked and took a step forward. What a coincidence to meet you here. Coincidence? Su Qinghui didn't think it was a coincidence. He remembered that he had been calling Su Peijian, but she hadn't picked up a single call. What did the man beside her call Old Master Hua? Grandpa? So he's also a member of the Hua family? What was his relationship with Hua Jinyao? Why would he be with Su Peijian? Why was Su Peijian with another member of the Hua family? The smile on Su Peijian's face did not fade because of Su Qinghui's shock. Instead, she took another step forward and stood directly in front of Su Qinghui. Are you so happy to see me here that you forgot to speak? Su Qinghui came back to his senses. He looked at Su Peijian, then at Hui Yifan, who was standing behind her. Peijian, this is... Hello, uncle. Hui Yifan stepped forward and extended his hand to Su Qinghui. My name is Hui Yifan. I'm Hua Jinyao's cousin. I'm now the vice president of Tianyu Group. Su Qinghui looked at Hui Yifan. He had a good temperament and a good temperament. There was nothing to say about his height and appearance. The Hua family had good genes and their descendants were all outstanding. However, the man in front of him had shrewdness in his eyes, and there was a hint of arrogance in his expression. Compared to Hua Jinyao, he was slightly inferior. All of Su Qinghui's thoughts raced in an instant. He politely reached out to shake hands with Hui Yifan's extended hand. Hello, uncle. Su Qinghui should be younger than Hua Mingliang, so it was appropriate for Hui Yifan to call him that. Letting go of his hand, he took a step back and stood next to Su Peijian again. I've heard Peijian talk about you many times. I finally have the chance to meet you today. Hui Yifan gently placed his big hand on Su Peijian's shoulder and looked at Su Qinghui with a sincere smile on his face. Since you have the opportunity to be in Rong City this time, why don't we pick a time later to discuss the matter between me and Peijian? Su Qinghui's expression was calm. He was an extremely smart person. After listening to Hui Yifan's self-introduction, the way he looked at Su Peijian was a little different. Su Peijian knew that he was in Rong City, but she deliberately didn't answer his call. She chose to appear on such an occasion because she was sure that he wouldn't reject her. The matter between you and Peijian? Su Qinghui's voice was indifferent. Are you referring to your relationship or something else? Of course it's something else. Hui Yifan smiled brightly. To be able to get the elders from both sides together, of course it's to discuss my marriage with Peijian. Marriage? Su Qinghui looked at Hui Yifan and then at Su Peijian. Finally, his eyes fell on Su Peijian's face, but his words were directed at Hui Yifan. How long have you known each other? How long have you been dating? We've known each other for more than 3 months. If you're talking about dating, it's only recently. Hui Yifan told the truth. Su Qinghui frowned and stared at Su Peijian's face without blinking. 3 months? Dating is only recently, and you've already decided to get married? Is there a problem? Su Peijian smiled faintly and held Hui Yifan's arm with her hands. Do you think it's too fast? But we don't think it's fast at all. Su Qinghui looked at Su Peijian. His eyes were pure and unfamiliar. She was his daughter. He had held her in the palm of his hand and cared for her for more than 20 years. He had almost never scolded her. But now he felt that he didn't recognize this daughter anymore. You've already decided? Yes. Su Peijian smiled brightly and looked at Hui Yifan. The love in her eyes was obvious. If I wasn't sure, why would Yifan bring me to such an occasion? Su Qinghui's expression was serious. You wanted to say something. On the other side, old Master Hua also heard the commotion. He laughed twice. Good. I'm old and I like to see my children happy. If Yifan and Peijin can really be together. It's also a joyous occasion. Nephew, since you have time today, we can have a good talk about this. Su Qinghui didn't respond to old Master Hua's words. He just stared at Su Peijin as if he wanted to see into the depths of her heart. Su Peijin didn't avoid his gaze. Instead, she looked at Su Qinghui calmly. Su Qinghui narrowed his eyes slightly. Before Su Peijin could react, he suddenly reached out and pulled her to his side. Before pulling Su Peijin away, Su Qinghui forced himself to maintain his composure. He turned around and looked at old Master Hua. Old Master, I'm sorry. I have something to discuss with my daughter. Excuse me for a while. It's okay. Help yourselves. Old Master Hua pointed to the side as he spoke. The row of rooms at the back over there is specially prepared for guests to rest. Okay. Thank you. After saying this, Su Qinghui took Su Peijin's hand and walked to the back. Su Peijin wanted to pull her hand back, but Su Qinghui held it tightly. She was a little helpless. She couldn't break free, so she could only let Su Qinghui take her to the back. As they walked, she saw Su Qingsang and Li Qianxue standing not far away from the corner of her eye. She had been maintaining a good demeanor, but at this moment, there was finally a slight crack in her demeanor. Su Qingsang and Li Qianxue saw Su Peijin come in just now, but neither of them moved. No matter what Su Peijin's purpose was with Hua Yifan, they wouldn't be afraid. Another principle was that as long as Su Peijin didn't cause trouble and didn't take the initiative to provoke her, Su Qingsang and Li Qianxue wouldn't take the initiative to do anything to her. This was a tacit understanding between the mother and daughter that didn't need to be said. So they watched Su Peijin and Hua Yifan walk to old Master Hua, and then watched them chat there. They watched Su Peijin and Hua Yifan talk to Su Qinghui. Although they were far away, they couldn't hear what they were talking about. But Li Qianxue and Su Qingsang weren't stupid. At this point they could more or less guess what was going on. Now seeing Su Qinghui hurriedly pull Su Peijin away, the mother and daughter looked at each other. They didn't quite understand what Su Qinghui wanted to do. What was going on? But Li Qianxue was sure of one thing. That was, Su Peijin was really going to marry into the Hua family. She turned to face Su Qingsang, and there was a hint of worry in her eyes. As if knowing what she was thinking, Su Qingsang squeezed her hand with an indifferent expression. Mom, don't worry. I'm fine. Whether Su Peijin was really going to marry Hua Yifan or not, it didn't affect her at all. Li Qianxue couldn't help but be worried. Su Peijin's hoarse cry that day seemed to be right beside her ears. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about whether she was being too cruel to Su Peijin. But if she wasn't cruel to Su Peijin, she would have to be cruel to Su Qingsang. If that was the case, she was even more unwilling. Su Qinghui didn't notice the mother and daughter's gazes. With a serious expression, he held Su Peijin's hand and went to the lounge in the back. As he closed the door, Su Qinghui turned to face Su Peijin. He wasn't in a hurry to speak. His eyes, which were usually gentle and refined, were now faintly sharp as they landed on Su Peijin. Su Peijin felt uncomfortable under his gaze, but she forced herself not to show it. Dad, why are you looking at me like that? Is there something on my face? As usual, Su Peijin looked at Su Qinghui with a bit of a spoiled tone. However, Su Qinghui wasn't in the mood to joke with her like before. Why? Like Li Qianxue, Su Qinghui wasn't stupid. Why did Su Peijin want to be with Hua Yifan? He didn't think that such a short period of time was enough for Su Peijin and Hua Yifan to develop feelings for each other. He didn't believe it. What, why? Su Peijin blinked and looked puzzled. Dad, what are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. Su Qinghui's expression was very serious. Why do you want to be with Hua Yifan? Why do you want to marry into the Hua family? The expression on Su Peijin's face finally changed a little. She stopped smiling and stared at Su Qinghui. Dad, what do you mean? What do you want? After all, she was the daughter he had raised for so many years. Su Qinghui still had a basic understanding of her. What do you want? What are you planning? Ha. Su Peijin smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked at Su Qinghui coldly, her expression cold. Su Qingsang marrying Hua Jinyao is a matter of course. Now I'm going to marry Hua Yifan. In your eyes, I have ulterior motives? Su Qinghui didn't answer. He just stared at Su Peijin's face and said, Then tell me you're not. That. Su Peijin also responded to Su Qinghui with a serious face. Am I still your daughter now? Su Qinghui didn't answer this question. His expression changed slightly but only for a moment. Su Peijian didn't need his answer at this time. She only needed to vent the emotions in her heart at this time. Is it because after I switched identities with Su Qingsang, I'm no longer your daughter? Otherwise, why do you, my mother, and everyone else in the world seem to think that everything I do is for Su Qingsang? That, in fact, I'm not your child, am I? Did you pick me up from an orphanage? Is it because in your hearts I'm no longer worthy of a good life, right? There wasn't much anger in her voice. All the anger had already exploded once when she faced Li Qianxue that day. But this time she still felt hurt and uncomfortable. Because the person who questioned her had become Su Qinghui. How could it be Su Qinghui? She was raised by his side. From the age of 16 he brought her into the company and taught her bit by bit. At that time he only wished that he could add all the beauty of the world to her. She was his little princess. She thought that she would always be Su Qinghui's little princess. She even had a kind of blind confidence. Her trust in Su Qinghui was higher than anyone else's. She believed that even if the whole world didn't want her, Su Qinghui wouldn't abandon her. He was her father. For her he could swap her identity with Su Qingsang. For her he could make Li Qianxue's daughter an illegitimate daughter. For her he could endure for so many years. However, Su Peijian never thought that one day, even Su Qinghui would start to turn against her. Even he wasn't on her side anymore. How could this be? She stared at Su Qinghui with her eyes wide open. She wasn't looking at her father but at a stranger. Dad, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me? What did I do wrong? Su Peijian asked 3 questions in a row. With each question she took a step forward and finally stood in front of Su Qinghui. The distance between the father and daughter was less than 5 centimeters. It was just that the intimate father-daughter relationship had completely disappeared at this time. Dad, tell me, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? She had thought that she could endure it, but now she found that she really couldn't. She reached out and grabbed Su Qinghui's arm, looking at him with a pair of red eyes. Dad, tell me, what did I do wrong? Why are you all doing this to me? She looked very much like Su Qinghui's mother. When she looked at Su Qinghui like this, his heart trembled. It was undeniable that he had doted on Su Peijian for so many years, not only because he was angry with Li Qianxue, but also because of her appearance. At this moment, she stared at him with a face that was similar to his mother's. For a moment, Su Qinghui had a feeling that he had nowhere to hide. I changed my identity willingly, didn't I? Did you ask me? You didn't get my consent. You made me the daughter of the Su family. Did you ask me? Did I want things to become like this? Did I? You and my mother. I have 2 mothers. It's all you. You made me what I am today. It's all you that made me like this. I don't understand why all of you are blaming me now. What right do you have to blame me? Su Peijian stared at Su Qinghui's face and insisted on an answer. Tell me, what right do you have to blame me? Mom said that I married Hui Yifeng with ulterior motives. Why do you ask me? Okay, even if I have ulterior motives, can't I? Can't I marry Hui Yifeng? Why can Su Qingsang marry Hui Jinyao? Why can't I marry Hui Yifeng? So what if I don't want to marry her? Why did she take my mother and my father away? She took my brother, my home, and everything away from me. I had to swallow my anger. I had to smile and clap my hands. I had to tell all of you that it didn't matter. She did a good job. How could she do that? Su Peijian was aggressive. Every word made Su Qinghui speechless. Looking at Su Peijian's agitated face, he slowly took her hand and held it in his. His voice was filled with love and helplessness. It's not Qingsang's fault. It's my fault. Peijian, do you understand? It's not Qingsang's fault. It's my fault. If you want to blame someone, hate them. You can blame me, you can hate me. But Qingsang is innocent. He already owed Su Qingsang a lot. He didn't want to owe her any more. Su Peijian waved her hand. She didn't want to hear his explanation. She pulled her hand back, her eyes cold. It's her fault. Her existence is a mistake. If it weren't for her, I would still be the daughter of the Su family. If it weren't for her, I would still be the daughter of the Li family. That. You don't have to explain for her. Don't you know that the more you say she's innocent, the more I will hate her? Peijian? Su Qinghui's expression didn't look good. He had a feeling that Su Peijian would do something he didn't want to see. Of course you don't have to think too much. Su Peijian suddenly smiled. At this stage I really don't have the ability to do anything. You have to know that your daughter is amazing now. She is the eldest granddaughter-in-law of the Hua family. She is the person Hu Jinyao loves the most. Even if I want to do something to her, it won't be easy, right? Su Peijian said this calmly, but Su Qinghui understood what she meant. If I give you a chance, you will really? Yes, I will. Su Peijian raised her eyebrows and looked at Su Qinghui boldly. Why wouldn't I? After all, she took everything from me. Isn't it right for me to repay her a little? Su Peijian. Su Qinghui called out the name rather weakly. He felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. He was panting heavily. I've said it before. I'm sorry about this. It's my fault. You, Dad. Su Peijian suddenly smiled. She tilted her head and looked at Su Qinghui coquettishly. Look at you. Are you crazy? You are you and she is she. I didn't say I would forgive you for your mistake. Su Peijian smiled very openly. But under that smile it was desolation. What? From the moment she changed her identity until now, no one asked her if she wanted to accept such a fate. No one cared about her and asked if she was not used to such a change of identity. Her mother, who had raised her for more than 20 years, and her father, who had doted on her for more than 20 years, was not there. Every single one of them was worried and afraid. They were afraid that she would do something to Su Qingsang. If Su Qingsang was the treasure in their palms, then what about her? What was she? She didn't want much. She just wanted them to treat her the way they used to. Why couldn't they? Dad. The more hatred she felt in her heart, the brighter the smile on her face. Su Peijian moved closer and stared at Su Qinghui's face. Listen carefully. I didn't say I would forgive you. Su Qinghui looked at Su Peijian and felt speechless for a moment. Su Peijian chuckled. Dad, I'm serious. I won't forgive you. I won't forgive Mom and I won't forgive Su Qingsang. So, you don't have to worry. I'm just not here yet. You don't have to worry. As for Su Qingsang, I really can't touch her for the time being. After all, her man is too powerful. But it doesn't matter. No matter how powerful he is, there's still time, don't you think? Maybe one day her man will fall from his pedestal, and then I'll have another chance. Don't you think so? Peijian. Su Qinghui felt like a knife was being twisted in his heart. Do you want to ask how I became like this? Su Peijian blinked innocently. I also want to know how I became like this. Speaking of which, you're not the only one who's curious. I'm also curious. Peijian. It's all Dad's fault. Su Qinghui forced himself to stand up and walk to her. He looked at her with a pained expression. Peijian, everything is Dad's fault. I promise you you're still the daughter of the Su family. Come back to Lin City with me. I promise we can be like before. Okay. No. Su Peijian shook her head. Dad, it's useless. Me, you, my mother, and Su Qingsang, we can't go back. You should have known since the day you changed our identities. Peijian, okay. Let's not talk about it. I still have something important to do today. So I won't accompany you. Su Peijian bowed and gave Su Qinghui a very appropriate European court salute. When she got up again, there was only a faint but appropriate smile left on her face. What exactly do you want to do? Chapter 588. Only the father and daughter were left in the guest room, but the atmosphere was quite tense. Su Peijian didn't seem to feel the tense atmosphere. She was completely indifferent to the anxious look on Su Qinghui's face. Dad, look at you. You're anxious, aren't you? Don't worry. I just said that Su Qingsang's man is very powerful. Even if I want to do something now, I can't do it. She smiled sweetly and patted Su Qinghui on the shoulder. Don't be nervous, don't be nervous. It's my big thing. It has nothing to do with her. As for what her life will be like in the future, I can't guarantee it. After all, I really hate her. I can't help it. She was born to be annoying. Peijian. Su Qinghui's tone was cold. He waved Su Peijian's hand away. Qingsang is your sister, your biological sister. Yes, but I'm still your daughter. Your biological daughter. Su Peijian's hand was waved away by Su Qinghui, but she wasn't angry. She spread her hands and suddenly smiled again. Dad, just take a good look at it. Even without the Su family, I, Su Peijian, can also live a happy and fulfilling life. Su Qinghui clenched his fists and watched Su Peijian leave in front of him. He raised his hand to stop her but then put it down dejectedly. Yes, everything was his fault. Everything was his fault. But why did he have to repay his daughter? He regretted it. He really regretted it. Li Qianshua's figure flashed in his mind. Su Qinghui's body trembled. He quickly got up and went to the banquet hall. When Su Peijian came out of the room, the smile on her face disappeared without a trace. With a cold face, she straightened her back. Her face was cold and stern. Her brows were tightly knitted together, and her whole body revealed a coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away. "Tsk, what's wrong?" The voice that suddenly rang out had a hint of teasing and rumination in it. Hui Yifun's face was magnified in front of her. She looked at him coldly and didn't intend to answer him. Hui Yifun put his hand on her waist and brought her into his arms. "What? Are you upset because you talked to my future father-in-law? Why are you showing me a cold face?" Su Peijian glanced at him and slapped him hard on the back of his hand. "Hui Yifun, I haven't thought about marrying you yet. You don't have to make it sound like you're the only one I'll marry. Tisk, if you say that, I'm really sad." Hui Yifun grabbed her hand, which was about to pat him, and kissed it. "I think I've already shown my utmost sincerity today. What? Are you still not satisfied?" Su Peijian looked at him coldly and snorted. "I will only be satisfied when you help me push Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao into the mud." "Tsk. How ruthless." Hui Yifun clicked his tongue, but in the end, he laughed rather wickedly. "But I like your ruthlessness. Let's go. Let others do the good work. Let us be the bad guys." The corners of Su Peijian's lips turned up as she held Hui Yifun's arm. That was right. Who wants to be a good person? Who can take the role? Right now, she just wanted to be a bad person. Su Qingsang, Li Qianxue, Su Qinghui. No matter who it was, she wouldn't forgive them. She looked up at Hui Yifun, her eyes flashing with a hint of gloom. "By the way, you helped me make such a big splash today. I have to repay you no matter what, right? What do you want to do now?" Hui Yifun looked at Su Peijian and felt that the calculation on her face was too much to his taste. "Nothing. I'm just thinking that no matter what, I should let my good sister make a name for herself. After all, no matter what, she is still the young mistress of the Huo family. She is the wife of the president of the Tianyu group. Don't you think so?" Hui Yifun narrowed his eyes and almost instantly understood what Su Peijian meant. The corners of his lips curled up, and there was a hidden meaning in his smile. That's right. The banquet was about to begin. According to the tradition of previous years, as the president of the Tianyu group, Hu Jinyao had to go on stage to give a speech every year. This year was no exception. At this time, a few elders of the Huo family were standing not far from him. In front of him, in addition to Su Qingsang, there were also a few of his childhood friends, Wan Xianying, Su Changlong, Tang Mohan, and Cheng Xianyun. Tang Manlu and Li Wanyu were also there. However, Tang Manlu was a little embarrassed when she saw Su Qingsang. Li Wanyu didn't. She affectionately hooked her arm around Su Qingsang's arm and talked to her. Su Qingsang chatted with Li Wanyu, but she was a little absent-minded. Su Peijian and Su Qinghui had disappeared for a long time, and they hadn't shown up yet. She wasn't worried that Su Peijian would do anything to her at such a banquet, but she didn't like the feeling of being stared at. On the other side, standing with the elders of the Huo family was Li Qianxue. No matter how much Li Qianxue disliked Lu Tongjia, she still had to give face to the Huo family on such an occasion. Lu Tongjia did the same. The two of them stood together and didn't talk much. The atmosphere was even a little awkward. However, the two of them weren't in a hurry to leave. Instead, they talked from time to time. Li Qianxue was also looking in the direction of the entrance of the banquet. Ever since she knew that Su Peijian insisted on being with Hui Yifun, she knew that this adopted daughter of hers wouldn't be too obedient. She was ambitious and ambitious. She was indeed worried that Su Peijian would do something. She couldn't help but look in Su Qingsang's direction because of her worry. At that moment, Hu Jinyao also walked towards Su Qingsang. He stood in front of her, unable to hide the amazement in his eyes. Today, Su Qingsang looked like someone who had walked out of a painting of a court lady. The light gauze dress made her look elegant and graceful. Her skin was soft as if it were boneless. She didn't need to wear heavy makeup. Just a simple description was enough to make her look outstanding. "Wife." Hu Jinyao called her in a low voice. There was a hint of charm in his voice. "Later, come on stage with me to give a speech." "Me?" Su Qingsang was stunned. "Go up with you? What's wrong? You're my wife. If you don't go up with me, who will?" Hu Jinyao took her hand and smiled at Li Wanyu, who was standing next to her. He looked Su Qingsang up and down. Today, Su Qingsang was absolutely stunning. "My wife is so beautiful. I should at least introduce her to them, right?" Su Qingsang pressed her lips into a straight line. When she met Hu Jinyao's eyes, she nodded slightly. Hu Jinyao smiled. He took her hand and let her stand beside him. "Don't be nervous. The people who came today all have a cooperative relationship with the Huo family. Even if they don't, they still have to respect the Huo family. In addition to those in the business world, there were also some people in charge of related departments. Those people had a close relationship with the Huo family. They would give face to the Huo family. Who would dare to have any objections? I say, little sister-in-law, you should go up. Otherwise, brother Jinyao won't be able to show off later. Li Wanyu was also very good at making fun of people. Su Qingsang blushed. In the end, he didn't object. She turned around and found that Li Qianxue was looking in her direction. She smiled at Li Qianxue to reassure her. Only then did she hold Huo Jinyao's hand and walk up the stage with him. Every year at Tianyu Group's anniversary celebration, the president would give a speech. In the past, Huo Jinyao didn't like such occasions. When he wanted to give a speech, he would let Huo Mingguang go on stage. Speaking of which, this was also his first year speaking at the anniversary celebration. It was all because of Su Qingsang. He wanted the entire Rong city to know that Su Qingsang was his wife, the wife of the president of Tianyu Group. The MC read the opening remarks on stage. Huo Jinyao held Su Qingsang's hand. He was looking at her and Su Qingsang was also looking at him. Huo Jinyao was also very handsome today. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. There was a faint affection in their eyes. Su Peijian also saw this scene from afar. She sneered, picked up the wine glass in front of her, and glanced at Huo Yifan. Have you prepared everything? Of course. Huo Yifan picked up the wine glass beside him. You're my queen now. Your words are like an imperial edict to me. Su Peijian ignored what he said. She gave him a cold look and turned to look at Huo Jinyao holding Su Qingsang's hand and going up the stage. Huo Jinyao stood still on the stage. Su Qingsang looked at him with gentle eyes. He didn't need to make any more movements or say any more words. As long as he stood there, he would be a glowing object. Hello everyone, I'm Huo Jinyao. Thank you for taking the time to attend Tianyu Group's grand event. It has been nearly 50 years since Tianyu Group was established. From my grandfather, Huo Yangping, to me, we have been committed to turning Tianyu Group into an international group. After Huo Jinyao finished speaking, he suddenly changed the topic. Just now, before I went on stage, my assistant asked me, "Why didn't you go on stage to speak in the past but suddenly this year?" I said, because I have something very important to tell everyone today. Please allow me to introduce the lady beside me. She is my wife, Su Qingsang. As Huo Jinyao spoke, he looked at Su Qingsang with a smile, his eyes full of encouragement. She smiled at him and stood in front of the microphone confidently. Hello everyone. I'm Su Qingsang. I'm Huo Jinyao's wife. It's very nice to meet you all. I hope that in the future, everyone will continue to support Tianyu Group and Huo Jinyao. Thank you. The applause from the audience continued. The two of them were as dazzling as a golden couple. After the speech, Su Qingsang followed Huo Jinyao off the stage. Wherever the two of them went, many people greeted them and wanted to get to know them. Su Qingsang actually didn't like such occasions, but she was willing to endure it for Huo Jinyao. After Huo Jinyao's speech, it was Huo Mingguang's turn. After these speeches, there would be a performance. This was a program that was arranged every year. This year was no exception. After a popular domestic group sang an opening song on stage, the entire atmosphere began to liven up. After the two songs were over, the next part was supposed to be a magic show. This time, Tianyu Group made the gala very lively. That magician was also very famous in the industry. He kept changing all kinds of tricks on the stage. The audience knew that it was fake, but they were still dazzled. Huo Jinyao had heard Yang Wenchang mention before that the end of the magic show was a trick that changed into a car. That car was this year's special award for the most outstanding employee. However, he didn't expect that in the end, the magic show didn't change into a car. Instead, a white piano appeared. Not only him but Su Qingsang also saw it. The atmosphere was very lively after just now. The magician stood forward and bowed. Now I'll perform a special show for everyone. After saying the words special show, the rope that was originally prepared for the magic show was now transformed into a swing and slowly descended from above. Su Peijian sat on it and descended bit by bit. She looked at Su Qingsang from afar, and the corners of her eyes raised into a bright smile. When the swing descended to the ground, she slowly walked down. She walked to the piano, stood still and bowed. She sat down in front of the piano. She was dressed in red and looked beautiful and sexy. She sat in front of the black and white keys and raised her hands. The melodious sound of the piano rang in every corner of the banquet hall. She was playing the Symphony of Fate. The Symphony of Fate was one of Beethoven's most famous pieces. The first part of his was impassioned. Those who hadn't practiced the piano to a certain level couldn't play it like that. But Su Peijian played it. She was dressed in red, and she used very skilled fingering techniques and was completely engrossed in playing the song to the fullest. The guests present were indeed shocked. The Hua family, including old Master Hua. Li Qianxue stood in the distance and looked at Su Peijian. She wasn't as engrossed in the sound of Su Peijian's piano as the other guests were. She only had one feeling now. Su Peijian would definitely make a big move next. She subconsciously looked in Su Qingsang's direction. Su Qingsang was also in the stands. Not only her but also Hu Jinyao. Su Qinghui was also looking at the stage. Everyone's eyes were fixed on that place. Like Li Qianxue, he wasn't in the mood to appreciate Su Peijian's piano. In the past 20 years he had heard enough. The Su family had a special piano room that belonged to Su Peijian. She had been carefully trained by him and Li Qianxue. They had given Su Peijian the best education and the best resources. In this regard they indeed owed Su Qingsang. Wu Jinyao also had the same thought. He narrowed his eyes. After the music ended, he saw Su Peijian end the music with an extremely handsome gesture. Finally she stood up amidst the applause. The applause below the stage was thunderous. Su Peijian bowed to the ground, a faint smile on her lips. Thank you, everyone. Fate is very wonderful. I would like to give this song to you and at the same time to my dear sister Su Qingsang. That's right, I'm Su Qingsang's sister, and also your President Hua's sister-in-law. My name is Su Peijian. Here I would like to congratulate my sister first. As she spoke, she reached out in Su Qingsang's direction, and the lights of the banquet hall shone on Su Qingsang. Congratulations on marrying Mr. Hu Jinyao, and also on becoming the wife of the president of Tianyu Group. Chapter 589. The applause in the hall became even louder. Hu Jinyao's expression suddenly changed. Both Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui didn't look too good at this time. Everyone knew about this matter but everyone intentionally ignored it. The impact of Su Qingsang and Su Peijian's identity swap was definitely not only on Su Qingsang's life as an illegitimate daughter for more than 20 years. Most importantly, she had lost all the resources that should have belonged to her. The best education, the best cultivation. Su Peijian was proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Li Qianxue raised this daughter as a lady from a wealthy family. Playing the piano was just the simplest thing for Su Peijian. Not only could she play the piano, but she could also play the violin and the guzheng. For more than 20 years she had not only enjoyed the parental love of Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue, but also the cultivation of these top-notch teachers. These were things that Su Qingsang could never make up for. Li Qianshue's heart shook and she almost vomited blood. She moved her toes and was about to walk forward. Su Qinghui blocked in front of her. Are you satisfied? Li Qianxue gritted her teeth and looked at Su Qinghui with her eyes wide open. Su Qinghui, are you satisfied? Is this what you want? Qianxue, calm down. Su Qinghui looked around and stepped forward to stand in front of Li Qianxue. You can't go up now. If things got out of hand, no one would look good. Su Qinghui. Of course you don't want me to go up. Of course, Li Qianxue knew that at this time she couldn't go up and blame Su Peijian. If she really did that, things would definitely get worse. Her eyes were red. She lowered her head and almost cried. Su Qinghui, I hate you. Qianxue. I'm sorry. An apology was too weak. Su Qinghui turned to look at Su Peijian. He patted Li Qianxue on the shoulder and said, I'll go. Let him stop Su Peijian's madness and intensity. Li Qianxue glared at him. You don't understand. You don't understand at all. This battle had to be won by Su Qingsang herself. Today was a good day for Tianyu Group and Hu Jinyao. As the wife of the president of Tianyu Group, no one would care about whether Su Peijian could play the piano or not. They only cared about Su Peijian's letter of challenge. If Su Qingsang didn't play the guqin today, or if she didn't think of a way to defeat Su Peijian to prove herself, she would definitely be embarrassed on such an occasion. Su Qinghui, I hate you. Li Qianxue was extremely anxious. She was about to go on stage, but she saw that Su Qingsang, who had been standing there without moving, finally moved. Hu Jinyao knew from the moment Su Peijian threw out the challenge letter that Su Peijian didn't come with good intentions, but he didn't expect that Su Peijian would ask Su Qingsang to play the guqin. As far as he knew, Su Qingsang had no chance to learn these things. Qingsang? Hu Jinyao's expression was solemn. He reached out to hold Su Qingsang's hand. Su Peijian was really tired of living. She wanted Su Qingsang to play the guqin? He moved his toes and was about to step onto the stage. Su Qingsang glanced at him and shook her head. What Li Qianxue could think of, Su Qingsang could also think of. Today's battle must be fought by herself. Qingsang? I'm fine. Su Qingsang smiled at Hu Jinyao and said in a very low voice, If I embarrass you later, you can't despise me. I'll never despise you. Hua Jinyao looked at her with a fervent gaze. Su Qingsang smiled. That smile was a little satisfied and nostalgic. She leaned forward and kissed Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao heard her say in a very low voice, I need some energy, that's all. After kissing him, she smiled and went onto the stage step by step in Su Peijian's direction. The applause in the banquet hall became even louder. Even old Master Hua started clapping. Su Peijian stood on the stage and the applause stopped for a moment. Su Peijian stood in front of the piano, a white piano and a red dress. The scene was really pleasing to the eye. Su Qingsang and Su Peijian both had their own characteristics. Su Peijian was delicate, and Su Qingsang was elegant. Sister, please. Su Peijian smiled faintly and raised her hand gently. She motioned for Su Qingsang to sit down beside her. Su Qingsang glanced at her and was in no hurry to sit down. Instead, she picked up the microphone in the middle. She walked to stand in front of Su Peijian and looked down at the audience. My sister started practicing the piano when she was 4 years old. Isn't she very good at it? Yes. Not only did the audience respond, but there was also applause. My sister has already played such a beautiful piano. I think even if I played with her, I probably wouldn't be able to amaze you guys. Su Qingsang said half jokingly and half seriously. There was a burst of laughter from the audience. She stood there, natural and unrestrained. The golden dress made her look elegant and extraordinary. There was a bright smile in her eyes as dazzling as the stars. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang with admiration and amazement in his eyes, which were as deep as the sea. As Su Qingsang spoke, she held Su Peijian's hand and said, So I thought, why don't I sing a song for you guys? My sister will play the piano and I'll sing. What do you think? Okay. The audience was even louder than before. Su Qingsang looked at Su Peijian and said, Sister, let's sing a legendary song together. I hope that Tianyu group will become a legend. She looked at Su Peijian with a calm expression and a calm gaze. Su Peijian's hand, which was on the piano, had to restrain itself from clenching into a fist. Sister's legendary song should be better than the Symphony of Fate, right? She didn't move, so Su Qingsang joked again. There was faint laughter from the audience. Su Qingsang turned around and looked at the crowd. Can you give my sister a round of applause? Thank you, everyone. There was applause from the audience. Su Peijian's smile froze for a moment, but she could only sit down with a smile. Su Qingsang nodded slightly. Even if Su Peijian was unwilling, she had no choice but to start playing the very famous legend. Just because I saw you one more time in the crowd, I couldn't forget your face. I dreamed that I could meet you again one day, and from then on, I began to miss you alone. As soon as she spoke, everyone present was shocked. Even Hua Jinyao and the others had heard Su Qingsang sing before. But the feeling she gave them at that time wasn't as shocking as it was now. Su Qingsang's voice wasn't very crisp, but it was very pleasant to listen to. At this moment, she lowered her voice by an octave, and it sounded ethereal and beautiful. Her singing was not inferior to that of a diva. She stood there, accompanied by the soft sound of the piano. On the stage, one red and one gold, 2 figures, one moving and one still, formed a beautiful scene with the white piano. It wasn't that Su Peijian hadn't thought of playing bad things such as playing faster or higher. However, Su Qingsang seemed to know what she was planning. Every time she wanted to do something, Su Qingsang would stand in front of the piano and sing to her with one hand on her shoulder. She had originally wanted to make things difficult for Su Qingsang, but she ended up becoming her accompaniment. Su Peijian only felt a mouthful of blood choking in her throat, and she almost spat it out. This song didn't have any more intense ups and downs. It was just sung softly with thousands of twists and turns. Everyone in the banquet hall was intoxicated. Su Qingsang's voice, the confidence that she revealed at this moment, and the feeling that she gave people when she moved. Even if her facial features weren't as bright and beautiful as Su Peijian's, after this scene, she had already suppressed her limelight. Su Peijian was angry, but Su Qingsang was getting better and better as she sang. I'd rather spend this life waiting for you to realize that I've always been by your side and never left. After singing the last sentence perfectly, Su Qingsang pulled the microphone away from her. It was like a scene from a concert and it sounded like a lingering aftertaste. Su Qingsang lowered her eyelashes slightly and held the microphone in her hand. She just stood there like that, and it was also a scenery. Su Peijian, who was at the back, had become her foil. And everyone remembered Su Qingsang. He remembered this legend of hers. The Symphony of Fate that had shocked them before seemed to be not worth mentioning at this moment. The piano stopped, but there was still a lingering sound. However, if an expert were to listen at this moment, he would definitely hear that Su Peijian's final ending was far less elegant than when she played Fate just now. She stood up and walked forward, intending to take over the microphone and regain her home field position. But how could Su Qingsang let her do as she wished? She reached out and grabbed Su Peijian's hand. With a little force, the two of them faced the audience together. Su Qingsang had a smile on her face. Even if her facial features weren't as bright and beautiful as Su Peijian's, she was still shining brightly at this moment. The light shone on her at this moment, making her look a little ethereal. She held Su Peijian's hand tightly, not giving her a chance to take the microphone away from her hand. She moved her toes forward a little. It was only a distance of half a step, but it made her the main character and Su Peijian the supporting character. Thank you, everyone, and thank my sister for accompanying me with this song Legend. I hope that our Chanyu group will become a legend in Rong City. It will also become a legend in the world. Her voice was very soft and ethereal. After singing just now, her voice was even more impressive than when she introduced herself. And that accompaniment made Su Peijian so angry that the smile on her face couldn't be suppressed. However, the light shone on her face and she couldn't even flare up now. Now let's give up our position to the performers at the back. Otherwise, I think they might complain later that I'm stealing their jobs. Ah. There was another burst of laughter and applause from the audience. Su Qingsang held Su Peijian's hand gracefully, bowed forward, and left the stage perfectly. Su Peijian's face was stiff. She forced herself not to show her fear and not to be angry, but how could she not be angry? All the smile on her face couldn't be suppressed after she left the stage. Chapter 590. Li Qianxue had been worried. She was scared when she saw Su Qingsang go on stage. She had never been so scared before. She was afraid that Su Qingsang would lose to Su Peijian. She was afraid that Su Qingsang would be at a disadvantage. She regretted countless times. She regretted not being more magnanimous and tolerant. If she had trained Su Qingsang according to Su Peijian's standards, Su Qingsang would definitely be more outstanding today. Until she saw Su Qingsang's performance, until she heard her daughter speak. Her heart had been hanging in the air. In the end, Su Qingsang left the stage. Her heart, which was worried about Su Qingsang, seemed to finally be at ease. Her back was covered in a layer of sweat. After Su Qingsang's performance, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. Su Qinghui stood beside her. He had been paying attention to Li Qianxue and Su Qingsang. He was also amazed by Su Qingsang's performance. He had never seen a daughter like this. Seeing that Li Qianxue's body relaxed after Su Qingsang's performance, he reached out to help her. Li Qianxue waved his hand away without thinking. She turned to face him and stood still, her eyes cold. Su Qinghui. She had so many things she wanted to say and so many emotions she wanted to vent. But now, she couldn't say anything other than Su Qinghui's name. She didn't need to say anything. Su Qinghui understood. Ignoring her resistance, he held her in his arms. He gently patted her back. Li Qianxue's body tensed up. At first, she wanted to break free, but the occasion wasn't right. She thought of Su Qingsang and Su Peijian. The emotions in her heart were in a mess. She couldn't help but grab the front of Su Qinghui's shirt tightly. Her trembling voice was filled with suppressed emotions. Su Qinghui, you owe her. You owe her for the rest of your life. Su Peijian shook Su Qingsang's hand off. If it weren't for her last shred of dignity, she might have lost her temper on the spot. After shaking Su Qingsang's hand off, she realized that something was wrong. She grabbed Su Qingsang's hand and led her to a corner. She took a step forward and stood in front of her. She looked at Su Qingsang with fire in her eyes and a low voice full of sharpness. Su Qingsang, are you very proud now? Are you proud of yourself? Su Qingsang looked at her exasperated face and chuckled. I'm quite proud of myself. After all, it would be hard for me not to be proud of having Miss Su as my accompaniment. Don't you agree? Her smile was faint and her expression was magnanimous. No matter who saw her now, they would not think about how nervous she was before she went on stage. Speaking of which, Su Qingsang really didn't have any outstanding talents. She grew up with the identity of an illegitimate daughter. The Su family being willing to give her a mouthful of food was already a gift. How could they let her go to those things? Moreover, she wasn't interested in that. Therefore, compared to Su Peijian, she really didn't have any talent to show. Her voice was not bad, but she had never wanted to sing. To be able to sing a legend like this, he had to thank his medical school days. Every year at the medical school's gala, there would be people who would perform on stage. Su Qingsang was never a person who liked to be in the limelight. However, the year she was about to graduate, the class monitor misheard and reported her name. When she found out, it was too late. She wanted to say that she didn't want to perform, but the program had already been reported to the school. Su Qingsang had no choice but to bite the bullet. She was a person who pursued perfection. Since she had decided to go on stage, she had to perform well. For that time on stage, she practiced for a long time. She learned how to pronounce, how to speak, and how to turn. Fortunately, it hadn't been too long since she graduated. Her voice could still be heard. The calmer she was, the angrier Su Peijun became. Su Qingsang, don't go too far. How did she go too far? She was the one who provoked her first. How did she become the one who went too far? My woman, so what if I go too far? The voice that suddenly sounded was a bit cold. Wu Jinyao had come out of nowhere. He stood in front of Su Qingsang, put his big hand on her shoulder, and looked at Su Peijun with sharp eyes. Su Peijun's body trembled under Wu Jinyao's stare, and her momentum suddenly weakened. Wu Jinyao curled the corner of his lips. His tall figure created a great sense of oppression at this moment. So what if my woman goes too far? Su Peijun gritted her teeth. At this point, what could she do? Su Qingsang looked at Wu Jinyao. Her heart warmed. Actually, she wouldn't be at a disadvantage. But she liked Wu Jinyao's protective look. President Hua, this is between me and Qingsang. It has nothing to do with you. Qingsang is my wife. Do you think it has anything to do with me? Just as Su Peijun was about to vomit blood, another voice sounded. It's so lively here. Hui Yifan had come out of nowhere. He stood next to Su Peijun. His gaze swept over Hu Jinyao and Hui Yifan, and he smiled. Big brother, what are you doing? No matter what, Peijun is your future sister-in-law. Don't scare her on my behalf. He also put his hand on Su Peijun's shoulder. His intention to protect her was quite obvious. Hu Jinyao's gaze swept over his hand, and finally returned to Hui Yifan's face. Their eyes met, and for some reason, there was a strange surge of pressure in the air. You also said that she is future. Since it is future, let's wait until she marries into the family. The corners of Hu Jinyao's lips curled up slightly, and there was a hint of mockery in his expression. Su Peijun felt more and more anxious. What did Hu Jinyao mean? Big brother, it's really interesting to talk like this. Don't worry. I will definitely make Peijun your sister-in-law. Then we can wait and see. Hu Jinyao put his arm around Su Peijun's waist, glanced at Hui Yifan and Hui Yifan's faces, turned around and left. Su Peijun was so angry that her teeth itched. She was really uncomfortable. She waved Hui Yifan's hand away. Enough. Okay baby, don't be angry. Hui Yifan held her hand. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Don't be anxious. How could she not be anxious? She glared at Hui Yifan hatefully. You'd better pray that the signing of the contract will go smoothly in 2 days or else. Okay. Hui Yifan put her in his arms again. Don't be angry. Trust me, it will go smoothly. Su Peijun walked beside Hu Jinyao and she suddenly laughed out loud. Her laughter was very low. Hu Jinyao turned his face to look at her. What are you laughing at? Nothing. Su Peijun glanced at him. I think Su Peijun's reaction just now was quite funny. Hu Jinyao twitched the corner of his mouth. She probably didn't expect that you would turn her into a joke when she wanted to see you make a fool of yourself. Su Peijun laughed, stuck out her tongue and said playfully, it's not a joke, but she didn't get what she wanted, so she's probably very angry. Wu Jinyao smiled as well. He kissed her gently on the cheek and said, you sang so well just now. Why didn't I notice it before? When you went to play with us, you held back, didn't you? Yes. Su Peijun's eyes curved. I always have to hold back. Well done. Hu Jinyao looked at her slightly open lips and couldn't help but kiss them. I like it. Su Peijun's face was a little red. From the corner of her eye, she saw Su Peijun and Hui Yifan turn around and leave, and the smile on her face faded a little. She actually didn't want to have a bad relationship with Su Peijun. From Su Peijun's point of view, she had lost everything. It was understandable that she would have emotional dissatisfaction. If Su Peijun didn't do anything and just let it go, then she was willing to let it go. If Su Peijun didn't want to stop and would make more moves, then she had no choice but to do it. Su Peijun didn't wait for the banquet to end and wanted to leave early. However, she couldn't leave because Old Master Hua was looking for her. Old Master Hua didn't know that Su Peijun didn't know how to play the guqin, so he thought that the two sisters' performance just now was a temporary surprise. Naturally, he knew that Su Peijun was multi-talented. For a moment he didn't realize Su Peijian's original intention. Peijian, you gave a good surprise today. Did you tell that last Qingsang long ago? Yes. Su Peijian smiled brightly, but only she knew how unwilling she was in her heart. I wanted to play the forehand duet with my sister, but she said that it would take longer to practice. This is the best. Good, good, good. Old Master Hua said the word good 3 times. He looked at Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue in the distance. Ask your father to come over later to discuss your marriage with Yifan. Old Master Hua thought that Su Peijian and Hua Jinyao hadn't held a wedding in Rong City yet. Now that Su Peijian was going to be with Hua Yifan, the wedding must be held in a lively manner. Su Peijian's face was really a little stiff now. Discuss her marriage with Su Qinghui? Li Qianxue was in a bad mood. She was also the one who wanted to leave early. However, she couldn't. Not only was she not in a hurry to leave, but she also stood aside when someone came up to say hello and knew that Su Qinghui was Su Peijian's father. President Su is amazing. Both of his daughters are so outstanding. It's really gratifying that they can both marry into the Hua family. That's right. President Su's daughter is better than so many outstanding daughters in Rong City. He's really good at teaching. Su Qinghui didn't want to hear those praises. However, he had to listen to them. Not only him but also Li Qianxue. Others wouldn't know that they were divorced, let alone that Su Peijian and Su Qingsang had the same father but different mothers. Li Qianxue stood beside Su Qinghui. After the crowd dispersed, she glanced at Su Qinghui coldly. This is the last time. She didn't say what the last time was. She walked towards Su Qingsang intending to leave first. Su Qinghui watched her figure disappear into the distance and sighed silently in his heart. He had thought that it was a chance to get close to Li Qianxue and repair their relationship. However, he didn't expect that not only did he not get what he wanted, but it also made their relationship even worse. Looking in Su Peijian's direction, Su Qinghui knew that it would be even more difficult for Li Qianxue to forgive him. Before he could recover from that emotion, Old Master Hua had already asked Hua Yifan to invite him. Old Master Hua was a powerful person. After entertaining for most of the day, he was sitting on the sofa in the banquet hall to rest. Hua Yangyuan and Hua Yangxiu sat beside him. In addition to them, there was also Hua Yifan and Su Peijian. There was also Hua Mingliang, Yan Chuanya and her husband, Hua Yang and Hua Manzi. Su Qinghui didn't see Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang, so he greeted everyone present. Finally, he sat down on the sofa opposite Old Master Hua. Nephew, where's niece? She's not feeling well. She went back to the hotel to rest. Old Master Hua nodded. He understood the real relationship between Li Qianxue and Su Peijian, so he didn't ask any more. Nephew, I've already said it once. Now I'll say it again and I'll also ask for your opinion. As Old Master Hua spoke, he glanced in the direction of Hua Yifan and Su Peijian. The two of them were sitting together, holding hands, looking very loving. Let's discuss Peijian and Yifan's marriage. Su Qinghui had prepared before he came, but he didn't expect Old Master Hua to be so anxious. What I mean? Get engaged first, then get married. It was a lively and bustling event. As for how much betrothal gift you want and what other requirements, just mention it. I mean a wedding in Rong City. As for whether to do it in Lin City, we'll also ask for your opinion. If you need to do it, we can also cooperate. He married both of his daughters to the Hua family. Hua Jinyao's previous matter with Su Qingsang had become a foregone conclusion. Old Master Hua definitely wanted this second wedding to be a grand one. I think that's good too. Hua Yangyuan also said at this time, one in Rong City, one in Lin City. Our Hua family can't be too casual in marrying a daughter-in-law. Su Peijian leaned her face against Hua Yifan's chest, and the anger in her heart before. Finally, it was a lot smoother. Su Qinghui sat there for a long time without moving. In front of him was an elder of the Hua family, and opposite him was Old Master Hua's smiling eyes. He turned to look at Su Peijian and saw the smile in her eyes. He pursed his lips and spoke softly under Su Peijian's smiling face. Sorry, I don't agree to this marriage. The air seemed to suddenly become silent. Everyone in the Hua family looked at Su Qinghui, as if they didn't understand why he meant this. Nephew, you must be joking, right? I'm not joking. Su Qinghui faced Old Master Hua with a fearless expression. I really don't agree. Well? Old Master Hua looked at the other people present, then looked at Su Peijian, and finally seemed to be a little confused. Nephew, do you have any dissatisfaction with Yifan? Neither. Su Peijian's face turned pale. She never expected Su Qinghui to do such a thing. Then what are you doing? Old master, I think it's better for me to tell you something first. Su Qinghui's voice was indifferent. You should know that although Peijin is my daughter, she can't be considered the eldest daughter of the Su family. At this point, Su Peijin's face was already quite ugly. She almost couldn't help but lose her temper. Hui Yifan squeezed her hand tightly and gave her a disapproving look. Su Qinghui acted as if he didn't see Su Peijin's change of expression. Peijin is my daughter, but she is an illegitimate daughter. She almost couldn't help but lose her temper. Hui Yifan squeezed her hand tightly and gave her a disapproving look. Except for old Master Hua, everyone's expression changed. Nian Chuanya had known it for a long time, but when she heard Su Qinghui say it out loud, her expression became even more interesting. She's illegitimate. Now, it had nothing to do with the Li family in Lin City. I don't think she's good enough for Dad. Su Peijin had been upset the whole night. She had been suppressing her emotions. This time she didn't want to suppress it anymore. Do you have to be like this? I just wanted to make it clear to my in-laws in advance. Su Qinghui looked calm. He looked at Su Peijin, and his usually elegant face was filled with determination. I've taught you that a gentleman does not lie in the dark. I've made mistakes before, so I don't want you to make them again. Your status doesn't match Hui Yifan's. Dad. Su Peijin gritted her teeth and clenched her fists. Old Master Hua looked at the father and daughter and cleared his throat to smooth things over. Nephew, you don't have to say that. I already know Peijin's identity. The Hua family doesn't mind. We didn't object to Su Qingsang's marriage with Jin Yao. Old Master, I know you're a good person. Su Qinghui's attitude didn't change. After what happened before, he knew very well that Su Peijin wanted to marry into the Hua family because she didn't get along with Su Qingsang. How sincere could she be towards Hui Yifan? A marriage without feelings wouldn't be happy. Su Peijin was now possessed. In order to make Su Qingsang unhappy, she didn't mind putting herself in danger. But there are some things I want to make clear to you first. For example, Peijin's identity and the gap between her and Hui Yifan. I've made these clear. I know that nephew is magnanimous. However, these are all small matters. You don't have to be so agitated, don't you think? Anyway, I won't agree. Su Qinghui's attitude was firm. Su Peijin was furious. She sat there and felt as if she had been stripped naked. Embarrassment, shame, and all kinds of emotions surged, making her face turn red. Dad, I'm already an adult. I don't need your permission to do anything. She was going to marry into the Hua family. Yes, you're old enough to have your own opinions. So, you don't need my permission to do anything. Su Qinghui nodded and didn't refute her words. I'm just explaining my attitude. As for what you plan to do, that's your business. He stood up and glanced at Old Master Hua. Old Master, I have reservations about this marriage, but I've already said it first. However, I've already said this first. If you still want Peijin to enter the Hua family, then do as you please. You don't have to inform me to attend the wedding. Su Peijin's face turned from red to white. She didn't expect Su Qinghui to be so decisive. She stood up and stood in front of Su Qinghui when he was about to leave. Dad, I thought I was still your daughter. Yes. I also thought you were still my daughter. Su Qinghui knew what she meant, but he believed that she also knew what he meant. I thought you didn't see yourself as my daughter anymore. If Su Peijin hadn't deliberately made things difficult for Su Qingsang just now, Su Qinghui wouldn't have such an attitude now. However, he was very clear about Su Peijin's actions just now. She had such an attitude even before marrying into the Hua family. If he really let her marry into the Hua family and have more contact with Su Qingsang, what would she do? Or perhaps she had already made a move without him knowing? Su Qinghui didn't want to think so badly of Su Peijin, but now he had to think about it. Dad. Su Peijin took a step forward. She lowered her voice and pleaded. That was her last glimmer of hope for Su Qinghui. Today is a good day. You can disagree with me marrying Hui Yifan, but you're my father. Are you sure you really want to do this? Yes, are you sure? Su Qinghui's usually gentle black eyes were now filled with disapproval. Are you sure you've thought it through and want to marry Hui Yifan? Are you sure you love him? Are you sure? He looked at her with a sharp gaze. It was as if he could see into her heart. Before Su Peijin could answer, Hui Yifan stood up first. He held Su Peijin's shoulder. Uncle, of course Peijin and I have real feelings for each other. I've been dating Peijin for a few months. Although I can't say that we understand each other 100%, sometimes when we meet the right person, we can't help but want to settle down with them. But sometimes when we meet the right person, we can't help but want to settle down with them. Since Peijin and I have decided, we will naturally get along well. In the future we will slowly deepen our understanding and get to know each other better. We will let our feelings for each other further. These words were very pleasant to hear, but unfortunately, he was facing Su Chenghui. Is that so? In that case I wish you all the best. But I still maintain my attitude. I don't support your marriage, but I won't interfere or stop it. That's all. I just hope that you won't regret it. He didn't believe that with Hui Yifan's shrewdness, he couldn't see that Su Peijian had ulterior motives in Yao Jiajing and the Hua family. But why could Hui Yifan still accept it? It meant that Hui Yifan's motives were not pure. Hua Jinyao was the president, and Hui Yifan was the vice president. There was a huge difference in the word vice. Everyone had ambitions. With an outstanding brother like Hui Jinyao above them, Hui Yifan probably had his own thoughts. Su Qinghui could even conclude that Hui Yifan and Su Peijian had some business dealings. Uncle, what are you talking about? Of course I won't regret it. After all, I have real feelings for Peijian. Su Peijian didn't say anything. She didn't want to say anything anymore. She just looked at Su Qinghui. Now she hated him as well. She would remember the humiliation these people had given her today. Whether it was Su Qingsang or Su Qinghui. One by one she would never forget all the things that had been done to her. She hid her emotions very well. In the eyes of others, she was delicate and pitiful. She didn't get her father's blessing and she felt very wronged. Only Su Qinghui, who had feelings for her for more than 20 years, didn't miss the flash of hatred in Su Peijian's eyes. His feelings became more and more complicated. Peijian, since you won't regret it, then you don't need my permission. Anyway, you're on your own. Old Master. Su Qinghui bowed in the direction of Old Master Hua. Qingsang's mother isn't feeling well. I'll go see her. Excuse me. Chapter 591. Su Peijian stood there. After Su Qinghui left, she finally couldn't help it. Grandpa Hua, I'm not feeling well. I'll go back and rest first. After saying this with all her remaining grace, she quickly left. Hui Yifan hurriedly said goodbye to Old Master Hua and quickly chased after her. Old Master Hua sat there, not understanding how things had turned out like this. It seemed that at this moment he finally realized that something was wrong. Brother, what do you think? Hua Yangyuan and Hua Yangxiu both looked at Old Master Hua. Old Master Hua waved his hand. I was too impatient. Forget it, let's not talk about this for now. Yes. Nian Chuanya interrupted. In my opinion, there are many good girls in Rong City. It's not worth arguing with them. Old Master Hua glanced at him, his eyes a little cold. Nian Chuanya was momentarily embarrassed and didn't speak anymore. Not long after Su Qingsang sent Li Qianxue away, she found that Su Qinghui was also leaving. Dad, you're leaving now? Su Qinghui looked at Su Qingsang with a complicated expression. He had just hurt another daughter's heart. But even so, he did feel guilty towards Su Qingsang. Qingsang, I've booked a plane ticket back to Lin City tomorrow. Your mother probably won't stay in Rong City for long. You have to take good care of yourself. Dad? Qingsang, what happened in the past was all my fault. I'm the one who let you down. When he scolded Su Peijian, did he have the right to do the same? A gentleman doesn't bully a dark room. He had a guilty conscience and now he had to bear the consequences. He didn't want to see the sisters become enemies, but he couldn't stop it. Dad, it's all over. It's all over. Su Qinghui didn't know how to tell her. He looked at Su Qingsang and suddenly reached out to hug her. Qingsang, don't hurt yourself. Don't let others hurt you. If someone bullies you, you can tell me. I'll definitely stand up for you. Su Qingsang was caught off guard by Su Qinghui and was completely stunned. She didn't know how to react for a moment, so she just stood there in a daze. Su Qinghui patted her on the back. After thinking for a long time, he said, Be careful of Peijian. He didn't finish his sentence, but he believed that Su Qingsang would understand. Judging from Su Qingsang's performance today, she wasn't the kind of person who would be bullied by others, so he was more or less relieved. She looked behind her and saw that Hua Jinyao had appeared out of nowhere and was standing behind Su Qingsang. Su Qinghui gave him a look that both of them could understand. Hua Jinyao nodded. Su Qinghui let go of her and looked at Su Qingsang with guilt in his eyes. In the corridor, the cold wind from the air conditioner made their arms feel a little cold. After Su Qinghui left, Su Qingsang couldn't help but glance at Hua Jinyao. What happened to my father? Hua Jinyao glanced at Su Qingsang and told her the latest news. Your father rejected Grandpa's proposal. He was against Su Peijian marrying into the Hua family. What? It was Su Qingsang's turn to be shocked. Hua Jinyao wasn't the only one who got the news. Lu Tongjia felt a little suffocated. Compared with old Master Hua's misunderstanding, she knew Su Peijian's true intentions better. She wanted to make things difficult for Su Qingsang and see Su Qingsang make a fool of herself. On the one hand, she was afraid that Su Qingsang would really make a fool of herself and embarrass the Hua family. On the other hand, she hated Su Peijian for not knowing what to do. She messed around on such an important occasion. No one else knew about it. In the end, Su Qingsang handled it perfectly. She should feel relieved, but she felt uncomfortable again. The better Su Qingsang behaved, the more uncomfortable she felt. Because she always thought of Su Qingsang hugging Zhang Yichen. That feeling made Lu Tongjia feel as if there was a fishbone stuck in her throat. It was really uncomfortable. What's wrong? Hua Mingguang noticed that Lu Tongjia didn't look good. Are you not feeling well? No. Lu Tongjia shook her head. She thought of something else. Su Qinghui is sensible. He knows that his daughter is an illegitimate daughter and doesn't deserve the Hua family, so he came to stop it. But isn't this a slap in the face? Su Peijian was an illegitimate daughter and didn't deserve Hua Yifan. But wasn't Su Qingsang also an illegitimate daughter? She married Hua Jinyao. What did that mean? Could it be that in Su Qinghui's heart, her son couldn't be compared to Hua Yifan? Hua Mingguang was a shrewd businessman. Thinking of something, he shook his head. I think you're thinking too much. There might be an inside story. What inside story? Lu Tongjia was already in a bad mood. That made her even more uncomfortable. What's wrong with my son? He doesn't want his illegitimate daughter to marry Hua Yifan, but he wants his illegitimate daughter to marry Jinyao? Is he looking down on people? Hua Mingguang was stunned for a moment and glanced at Lu Tongjia. Are you feeling sorry for Jinyao? This was a rare occurrence. How many years had it been? Who wants to feel sorry for him? Lu Tongjia didn't want to admit that her mood had been affected. I just can't bear to see his family have such double standards. Really? Hua Mingguang's voice was full of understanding. He had been married to Lu Tongjia for many years. How could he not know what she was thinking at this time? She could dislike her child, but she couldn't let others dislike him. Tell Jinyao later that this place is close to the old house. Let him live at home. I don't want to. If you want to tell him, you do it. Lu Tongjia didn't respond. She saw Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao standing hand in hand from afar. They seemed to be very intimate and she felt a little upset. Su Peijian wasn't good enough for Hua Yifan. Could Su Qingsang be good enough for Hua Jinyao? Thinking of this, Lu Tongjia's voice became colder. He wants to go home anyway. With a wife, parents or nothing. Hua Mingguang was stunned for a moment, then suddenly laughed again. His wife was good at everything, but she was soft-hearted. Forget it, let him do it. Su Qingsang looked at Li Qianxue, her eyes full of reluctance. Mom, can't you stay for a few more days? 2 days had passed since the anniversary celebration, and Li Qianxue had been with Su Qingsang for 2 days. She had booked a ticket for today and it would be flying in half an hour. I want to, but I have something to do at the company. I have to go back. Li Qianxue raised her hand and stroked Su Qingsang's cheek. Her eyes were a little emotional. Well, it's only 2 hours from Lin City to Rong City. I'll come to see you next time. You can also go back to Lin City. Okay. After Yusin's college entrance examination, you can come back and stay for a few days. The three of us will find a place to go out and play. Okay. Su Qingsang nodded. Her eyes were already red. Li Qianxue looked at her, wanting to say something but hesitating. She wanted to ask Su Qingsang why she wanted to see Xiang Kaiping several times, but in the end she remained silent. Just as she had said to Su Peijian, it was a good thing that Su Qingsang valued relationships. Although she didn't like her contacting Xiang Kaiping or seeing Xiang Kaiping. Qingsang, if Peijian bullies you, you have to tell me. Mom, you're thinking too much. How can she bully me? Su Qingsang thought of what happened at the anniversary celebration. Hua Jinyao told her everything. There was obvious worry in Li Qianxue's eyes. She only realized that Su Qingsang was kind and magnanimous after she recognized her daughter. Su Peijian might not be bad by nature, but now she had gone astray. She was afraid that she was no longer the daughter she used to be. Okay, don't see me out. I'm going in. Li Qianxue was about to walk to the VIP passage when Su Qingsang suddenly stopped her. Mom. Yes. My dad. Seeing that Li Qianxue frowned when she heard Su Qinghui's name, Su Qingsang cleared her throat. Mom. Let me tell you something. She told Li Qianxue what Su Qinghui did that day. Su Qingsang looked at her with some caution. Dad. He's doing this to protect me. And you know, Su Peijian cares about her reputation the most. Now that she was slapped in the face by my dad, she must have suffered a great blow. So, you don't have to say good things about him. Li Qianxue didn't accept Su Qinghui's kindness at all. These things were done by him. If it weren't for him, these things wouldn't have happened today. No matter how much he does for you, it's what he should do. Mom? Okay. Don't talk about him. I don't want to hear his name. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. Li Qianxue turned and walked straight to the VIP passage. When her back was facing Su Qingsang, her face wasn't as calm as she appeared to be. Su Qinghui, what was he up to this time? Su Peijian marrying Hui Yifan was far more beneficial than harmful to Su Qinghui. Moreover, Su Peijian was his beloved daughter. But now he was giving her up just like that? Man. Su Qinghui treated his own daughter like this. How could he treat her with sincerity? Su Qinghui had no idea at all. He wanted to make up for it, but he did it out of guilt, which caused Li Qianxue to misunderstand again. This made it even more difficult for him to pursue his wife in the future. After sending Li Qianxue away, no matter how reluctant Su Qingsang was, she had to let her life go back to normal. Because Su Qinghui came to Rong City, Su Qingsang went to see Xiang Kaiping again. She didn't mean anything else. She just wanted to test if Su Qinghui really didn't have feelings for Xiang Kaiping. If Su Qinghui came to see Xiang Kaiping, then she swore that no matter what Su Qinghui did in the future, she would never say a word for him in front of Li Qianxue. However, the result of the test made her more or less relieved. Xiang Kaiping was also very resistant to Su Qinghui and couldn't bear to hear her mention his name. That was good. It showed that Su Qinghui still had some sincerity for Li Qianxue. In fact, no matter who Su Qinghui was with, Su Qingsang planned to help no one and do nothing. But she still hoped that Su Qinghui could really think clearly about who he loved. Putting these things behind her, Su Qingsang resumed her life in the hospital, at home, and at the Hua family's old house. However, she didn't expect that she would soon be busy again. Old Master Hua sat in the study. He looked at Hua Jinyao sitting opposite him. It had been a week since the anniversary. Su Peijian and Hua Yifan's marriage didn't continue, as if it had been delayed. He returned to the Hua family's mansion on the weekend and still brought Su Peijian over. Old Master Hua was still polite on the surface, but he didn't mention her marriage to Hua Yifan again. Su Peijian was secretly resentful. She, who was holding back her anger, and she and Hua Yifan got the contract that they had been negotiating with the company they had privately opened. Hua Jinyao had been waiting for Su Peijian and Hua Yifan to sign the contract. As soon as Hua Yifan signed the contract, he came to see Old Master Hua with the contract. Jinyao, you came at the right time today. I happen to have something to talk to you about. Old Master Hua saw the document bag in Hua Jinyao's hand just now. What do you think about Su Peijian and Yifan's marriage? Su Qinghui said that day. Old Master Hua had lived to such an old age and had experienced many things. He could understand some things just by thinking about it. That was also the reason why he was indifferent to Su Peijian that day. It doesn't matter what I think. What matters is, Grandpa, don't you have an answer? Hearing Hua Jinyao's words, Old Master Hua suddenly smiled. Grandpa, I'm here today for another matter. Hua Jinyao opened the document bag in his hand, took out all the documents inside, and placed them in front of Old Master Hua one by one. Not only was there the contract that Hua Yifan had just signed with the company, but there was also all the investigation information. Old Master Hua picked it up and glanced at it briefly. His expression immediately changed. By the time he finished reading all the documents, the expression on his face was quite ugly. He kept panting heavily, and his face swelled to a purplish red. Hua Jinyao quickly stood up and went forward to pat his chest. Grandpa, don't be angry. If you are like this, I'm afraid I won't be able to tell you what will happen next. Old Master Hua patted his chest and kept calming down. When he calmed down, he looked at Hua Jinyao. You knew it long ago, didn't you? Yes. Hua Jinyao looked calm. I knew it a long time ago. I knew it the moment Su Peijian planned to marry into the Hua family. Good, very good. Old Master Hua's hands were trembling. You knew it a long time ago, but you didn't tell me? Hua Jinyao's expression didn't change. Grandpa, you should be glad that I only came to tell you, and not to directly hand this over to the board of directors. Although the Hua family held the largest share of the Tianyu group, it wasn't that there were no other shareholders. If this evidence was handed over to the company, Hua Yifan would probably be in trouble. This unfilial son. Unfilial son, Old Master Hua cursed several times in a row. When he calmed down, he patted his chest and looked at Hua Jinyao. Tell me, what else do you think I don't know? Hu Jinyao let go of his hand and returned to his seat. Grandpa, you already know about Qing Sang and Su Peijian's background. I admit that Su Peijian is extremely capable and resourceful. However, she is too scheming and there is a grudge between her and Qing Sang. It's impossible for her to get along with Qing Sang. What do you mean? Are you saying that she has occupied Qing Sang's identity for so many years, and she still doesn't think it's enough? Grandpa, from our perspective, we would say that Su Peijian has occupied Qing Sang's identity for more than 20 years. But from Su Peijian's perspective, she wouldn't think that way. She would only think about it. Why was it that she couldn't be a proper young miss anymore and became an illegitimate daughter? In her heart, she wouldn't think about what she had before. She would only think about what she had lost now. And Qing Sang was the culprit who caused her to lose everything. Old Master Hua's face was cold and he didn't say anything. Hu Jinyao sighed. She has resentment and anger in her heart. He had to vent his anger eventually. To her, marrying Yifan is just a springboard. In fact, you might not know what happened that day. Qing Sang doesn't know how to play the piano at all, so why did Su Peijian let her go on stage? Old Master Hua was a smart person. What else did he not understand? You mean she wants to marry into the Hua family and then find an opportunity to deal with Qing Sang? Yes. Although I'm not sure what she plans to do, I'm sure that she has an ulterior motive. Old Master Hua didn't say anything else. Some things once exposed were no longer the same. Then you mean, Grandpa, I'm not an intolerant person. But some things are my bottom line. You want me to stop Yifan and Su Peijian's marriage? Old Master Hua didn't want Su Peijian to be with Hua Yifan anymore. No. Hu Jinyao shook his head. I don't want you to stop it. In fact, it doesn't matter to us whether Su Peijian marries Hua Yifan or not. Then? Because if I kick Hua Yifan out of the Hua family, Hua Yifan will no longer be a member of the Hua family. Old Master Hua stood up and said, Jinyao? Jinyao you? Hu Jinyao's expression didn't change, but his gaze was unusually sharp. Shouldn't a traitor be expelled from the family? Jinyao, he's your cousin. Yes. He's my cousin, so I just expelled him from the family. Jinyao. Old Master Hua was old. Even though he knew that Hua Yifan had done wrong to the company and the Hua family, he was still his grandson. But that was his grandson after all. He hoped to see a happy family. Grandpa. Actually, I have harsher methods to deal with Hua Yifan, but I didn't. Because I don't think you want me to do that. He stood up, put the documents on the table back into the file bag. But Hua Yifan, I want to teach him a lesson. Old Master Hua's face was red. He panted and his emotions were very complicated. Jinyao, he's your younger brother. Your brothers? When he schemed against me, he didn't treat me as a brother. Old Master Hua didn't say anything. He cleared his throat and said in a trembling voice, I know this is his fault, but he doesn't deserve to die. I didn't want him to die. I just wanted him to leave Tianyu Group and the Hua family. Hu Jinyao put away all the documents and gently knocked on the table. Grandpa, everything else can be discussed, but this is the only thing that can't be discussed. Old Master Hua didn't say anything. He looked at Hu Jinyao. He had grown up and was no longer the little boy who was willing to listen to him. Chapter 592. Ruthless. Old Master Hua's words made Hu Jinyao laugh. He knocked on the table playfully and leaned forward to look at Old Master Hua. If I really wanted to be ruthless, this information would have appeared in the hands of the board of directors. Not on your table. Which big family didn't have one or two prodigal sons? Which family didn't have one or two secrets? But no matter which family it was, they would not allow such a traitor to exist. Especially Hua Yifan. He was already the vice president of Tianyu Group. He had both status and power. Moreover, he also had shares in Tianyu Group, yet he still did such a thing. If he had been more ruthless and the truth had blown up, what would have happened to Hua Yifan? How could Old Master Hua not know? He just couldn't bear it. But how will Yifan survive after leaving the Hua family? That's his business. Hu Jinyao's voice was slightly cold. Grandpa, you don't have to worry so much about him. After all, he has Su Peijian, who is smart and powerful, behind him. Don't you agree? Old Master Hua suddenly nodded. I see. You didn't want Su Peijian to marry into the Hua family, so you used this method? If Hua Yifan left the Hua family, he would no longer be part of the Hua family. What did it matter if Su Peijian married Hua Yifan or not? In order to protect Qing Sang, you really are willing to do anything. Old Master Hua's tone wasn't very good. He didn't want to vent his anger on anyone, but he felt that Hu Jinyao was too ruthless. Of course. Thinking of Su Qing Sang, Hu Jinyao smiled faintly. Everyone had a bottom line. His bottom line was Su Qingsang. He would never turn a blind eye to what Su Peijian had done to Su Qingsang. What he needed to do was to shatter Su Peijian's beautiful dream. Didn't she want to marry Hui Yifan? Then go and get married. She married Hui Yifan, who had left the Huo family. What he was more curious about was whether Hui Yifan, who had left Tianyu Group, would still let Su Peijian marry him willingly. Hu Jinyao was in a good mood after leaving old Master Huo's study. On his way downstairs he ran into Lu Tongjia. Seeing that it was her, the good mood on Hu Jinyao's face immediately disappeared. "Mom." Hu Jinyao greeted Lu Tongjia blandly, then walked past her to go downstairs. "Stop right there." Lu Tongjia looked at Hu Jinyao. She felt upset again. On the day of the anniversary, Hu Mingguang asked Hu Jinyao to stay at home, but he didn't. Later, she found out that Li Qianxue had come to Rong City to stay with Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang. Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang wanted to go back to accompany Li Qianxue. Lu Tongjia was furious when she found out about this. Look, she raised a good son. People say that girls look good. It was not much different for her to have a son here. Not only did she value her wife more than her mother, but she also valued her mother-in-law more than her mother. Is your mother-in-law still in Rong City? Nope. She took yesterday's flight back. Back. Lu Tongjia nodded. Your mother-in-law sure is arrogant. She came to Rong City but didn't visit us. She didn't even greet us when she went back. What? Does she look down on the Huo family? Hu Jinyao finally turned his eyes to Lu Tongjia, his expression cold. Mom, you also care about whether they come to visit or not. Do you think they like our family? What do you mean? His attitude made Lu Tongjia angry. Why can't I care? If you say you can, then you can. Hu Jinyao didn't refute. However, you framed Qingsang like that in order to ruin her reputation. It would be strange if she was willing to visit us. You? Lu Tongjia didn't expect him to still hold a grudge against her last time. What's with your attitude? How did I frame her? If she didn't have an affair with someone, I wouldn't have had the chance to frame her. Hu Jinyao frowned slightly. Looking at Lu Tongjia's agitated face, he didn't have any hope and didn't want to argue with her. I know whether she had an affair or not. You don't have to be agitated. You don't have to think of a way to frame Qingsang. Because no matter what you do, I will believe her. Lu Tongjia watched as Hu Jinyao ran away after saying that. She felt a breath stuck in her chest, making her uncomfortable. Apart from the uncomfortable feeling, she also felt a hidden sadness. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao and found that he seemed to be in a good mood today. Did something good happen? Something good. Hu Jinyao pulled her waist into his arms and let her nestle against his chest. What good thing? I helped you take a little revenge on Su Peijian. Su Qingsang heard Hu Jinyao's words and widened her eyes. This was a little revenge? This was completely cutting off all of Su Peijian's escape routes, okay? With Su Peijian's personality, she was afraid that she would go crazy. However, thinking about Su Peijian's disappointed look, she actually felt a little happy. Wasn't she being a little bad now? Not bad at all. Hu Jinyao didn't want her to be soft on Su Peijian. She just can't marry into the Huo family. She can still be with Hui Yifan. It won't affect her much. I don't want you to pity her. Su Qingsang shook her head. She didn't pity Su Peijian. There must be something hateful about a pitiful person. Su Peijian had already bullied her. How could she just swallow it? But this move of yours is really cruel. She didn't know what Su Peijian would do next. Be careful these days. Hu Jinyao suddenly became serious. Don't go home too late. Even if you are on duty in the hospital, try not to be alone. I don't want Su Peijian to have a chance to do anything to you. I don't think so. Su Peijian wouldn't break the law just to deal with him, would she? It's hard to say. If Su Peijian was really willing to settle down, he was willing to let it go. I'll talk to Yang Wenchang tomorrow and ask him to arrange 2 bodyguards for you. Stop it. Su Qingsang glared at him. She was a doctor. Did she have to bring 2 bodyguards when she went out? It would be strange if she didn't scare away those patients. Anyway, I go home in the hospital every day. I don't go anywhere else. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Moreover, Su Peijian was such a smart person. Why would she do something illegal? She shouldn't be that stupid. Anyway, you can't go wrong being careful. He didn't trust Hui Yifan and Su Peijian's characters. Of course, he would definitely ask Yang Wenchang to continue to keep an eye on Su Peijian. No matter what Su Peijian wanted to do, he wouldn't let her get what she wanted. Su Qingsang didn't object. She was sure that Su Peijian wouldn't really do anything extreme. After all, she was a smart person. She wouldn't be stupid enough to put herself in trouble. All right. Su Qingsang suddenly sat up straight as if she had thought of something. You said you shouldn't be alone. I forgot to tell you something. What? Su Qingsang tilted her head to look at him. Her pink cheeks were blushing. Her expression seemed to be a bit conflicted. I'm going on a business trip. I'll be gone for about half a month. The first hospital of Rong City had started a cooperation project with several hospitals in S Province. They were going to S Province for a free medical exchange. Su Qingsang's performance in the past few months in the hospital was remarkable. Sun Huiya strongly recommended her to go to S Province. When Su Qingsang found out, the list had already been made. You know, Director Sun has always thought highly of me. This time it's the same. She's already named me. There's no way I won't go. S Province. Wu Jinyao's first reaction was to think of one thing. S Province? Wasn't that? Yes. Which city? C City. C City? It wasn't the same place. But there were accidents and everything. Su Qingsang blinked. You're not happy? A little. Wu Jinyao wrapped his arms around her waist and pressed his chin against her neck. I don't want you to go. Su Qingsang hugged him, tilted her head, and kissed him on the cheek. I don't want to go either. But I have no choice. Wu Jinyao didn't say anything and tightened his arms. Su Qingsang couldn't help but kiss him on the cheek again. All right, it'll be quick. I'll be back in half a month. Honey, half a month is a long time. Then why don't you go with me? Su Qingsang joked. I'll apply to the hospital. I can't bring a family member, but I still need a driver. Why don't you come to our hospital and be a driver? You're getting bold. Wu Jinyao reached out and pinched her cheek. You dare to ask me to be your chauffeur? Can't I? Yes. Wu Jinyao rubbed her cheek. Seeing that her face had turned red because of his action, he couldn't help but lean over and kiss her. All right. Go if you want to. I support you. Hui Yifun's departure from Tianyu was imperative. There would be news about it by tomorrow at the latest. The departure of a vice president was not a small matter, especially for a large corporation like Tianyu. Next, whether it was Su Peijian or Hui Yifun, there would be some moves. In fact, he also believed that Su Peijian wouldn't dare to do anything to Su Qingsang openly, but he was afraid that she would do something secretly. Under such circumstances, it would be a good thing for Su Qingsang to leave Rong City. But after you go, you must be careful. I know. Su Qingsang knew that he would agree, but she was still quite happy. That was the best thing about Hu Jinyao. He looked a little strong and chauvinistic. But at critical times, he would always stand behind her and support her decisions. She couldn't help but raise her head and gently kiss his chin. Hu Jinyao, thank you. I don't really like this thank you gift. Hu Jinyao picked her up, left the sofa, and walked to the room. I'll be more satisfied if you change your thank you gift. Su Qingsang's face was a little hot, but she took the initiative to put her arms around his neck and let him carry her back to the room. What did you say? Hui Yifun looked at the person in front of him with a shocked expression. Chapter 593. The atmosphere in the office was depressing. Hui Yifun's voice had changed. Say that again. Wu Jinyao sat behind his desk and calmly watched Hui Yifun's face change. Even if I say it 100 times, it will still be the same. Hui Yifun, from today onwards, you're no longer the vice president of Tianyu Group. I was fired. Ridiculous. How could Hui Yifun accept such a thing? Who agreed? Who gave you the right? Let me tell you, do you think that just because you say you're fired, I'm going to leave? Yes. All I have to do is fire you and you want to leave. Wu Jinyao, don't go too far. Hui Yifun's face darkened. He glared at Hu Jinyao with hatred, as if he wanted to burn a hole in his body. You are a descendant of the Huo family, and so am I. You have contributed to the group, and I have also contributed to the group. What right do you have to drive me away? Because of this. As Hu Jinyao spoke, he placed the document that he had shown old Master Hua in front of Hui Yifun. Hui Yifun picked it up and casually glanced at it. His expression suddenly became even more unsightly. He slammed the document in his hand on the table and pointed at Hu Jinyao, his face full of resentment. Hu Jinyao, you set me up? Yes, I set you up. Hu Jinyao, you set me up? Hui Yifun was so angry that he repeated the same sentence twice. Hu Jinyao rubbed the tip of his nose and nodded. Yes, I set you up. Can't I? I'm your younger brother. You're welcome, cousin. You? Hui Yifun nodded angrily. Finally, he pointed at Hu Jinyao's face and said, Fine. Even if I run a company outside, even if I poach someone from the company, I will still be able to pay for it. But does Grandpa know that you're plotting against me? Sorry, Grandpa knows. Looking at his flustered and exasperated look, Hu Jingyao only found it funny. Do you think Grandpa will tolerate it? Let me tell you, it was my grandfather's idea to kick you out of Tianyu Group. Impossible. Hu Yifan didn't believe it at all. Grandpa is old. He likes to see a harmonious family. He won't agree. Hu Yifan. Hu Yifan stood up abruptly and sneered. You also know that Grandpa is old? Since you know Grandpa is old, why do you still do such a thing? Do you know that when Grandpa saw these things, he was so angry that he almost had a heart attack? And now you're telling me that Grandpa is old? Don't you find it ridiculous? Then why don't you show this to Grandpa? Hu Yifan gritted his teeth. He never thought that Hu Jingyao would have such a trick up his sleeve. He just wanted to suppress Hu Jingyao, but he didn't expect such a result. Why don't I show it to Grandpa? Hu Jingyao sat back down and admired the depressed look on Hu Yifan's face. I don't want to waste my breath on you. Anyway, from today onwards, you're no longer the vice president of Tianyu Group. I will find someone else to fill your position. Hu Yifan knew that Hu Jingyao was telling the truth. There was no turning back. He stood there, his heart filled with unwillingness and anger. This was not the result he wanted, nor was this the result he had predicted. Hu Jingyao, do you have to do this? Yes. Hu Jingyao wasn't polite at all. That's not all. I can also tell you that Grandpa said. From today onwards, you are no longer a member of the Hu family. What did you say? Hu Yifan's expression had completely changed this time, as if he had squeezed the words out from between his teeth. I said, from today onwards, you are no longer a member of the Hu family. This can't be Grandpa's idea, right? Grandfather Hu might kick him out of the company when he was angry, but he would never remove him from the Hu family. Hu Jingyao was the only one who could come up with such an evil plan. Yes, that's what I mean. Hu Jingyao, don't forget. Your surname is Hua, so is mine. If your surname wasn't Hua, I would have known. How can you stand here and talk to me with such an attitude? He knew that Hu Yifan wouldn't give up. Hu Jingyao didn't mind teaching him another lesson. No matter how Hu Yifan argued with Hu Jingyao, he knew that he had lost this time. Before leaving Tianyu, Hu Yifan still wanted to try one more time. Hu Jingyao, if possible, can you let Yang take over my position? He doesn't know about me. Hu Jingyao suddenly smiled. That smile was sarcastic. Hu Yifan, you still want to negotiate with me at this time? Hu Yifan's face was pale. Hu Jingyao didn't mind stabbing him again. Even you can't beat me. Do you think Hui Yang can beat me? Hearing that, Hu Yifan's face became more and more pale. When Su Peijian entered the room, she smelled alcohol. She furrowed her brows. What's wrong? The contract has been signed. You don't seem happy. In order to spite Su Qingsang, she brought forward the plan. The two of them started the company they privately opened and signed the contract the day before yesterday. Today Hu Jingyao was drinking. Happy? Hu Yifan's eyes were bloodshot. He stared at Su Peijian with his eyes wide open. Do you really not know, or are you pretending not to know? What? Ah. Hu Yifan put the glass in his hand heavily on the table. I was played by Hu Jingyao. For the past few years I've been thinking about why I lost to him. I've always wanted to prove myself. I want to prove that I'm better than him. But what happened in reality? Hu Yifan swept an empty wine bottle on the table to the ground. I was played by Hu Jingyao. Do you know? I'm no longer the vice president of Tianyu Group. I was even kicked out of the Hu family. Kicked out of the Hu family. How dare they do this to me? Su Peijian watched him lose control, and her brows furrowed so tightly that a mosquito could be squeezed to death. What's going on? Don't be crazy. Tell me clearly. Didn't I make it clear enough? Okay. Then I'll say it again. I thought what I did was flawless, but Hu Jingyao knew everything from the beginning to the end. He knew it all along. He knew what I was doing outside. He knew that I was running a company outside. Do you even know the company that signed a contract with me? Those were all traps set by Hu Jingyao. Let me tell you, me and you. We were all played by Hu Jingyao. Impossible. Su Peijian's expression didn't look good. How could this be? Yes. I also want to know how this could be. Hu Yifan stood up as he spoke. He stood in front of Su Peijian. Tell me, why did this happen? Su Peijian couldn't answer this question. She knew that Hu Jingyao wasn't an ordinary person when she was in Lin City. But she didn't expect him to be so powerful. Calm down first. Things haven't gotten to the worst yet. Maybe there will be a turn for the better? A turn for the better? What turn for the better? Wu Yifan sneered. His face, which was red from drinking, was full of anger. Let me tell you, there won't be a turn for the better. Because my grandfather already knows. Do you hear me clearly? Grandfather already knows. Hu Jinyao was too ruthless. He didn't even leave him a way out. Su Peijian didn't say anything. Wu Yifan took 2 steps back and sat on the sofa weakly. He poured another glass of wine and began to drink. However, after he drank 2 glasses, Su Peijian suddenly grabbed his hand. Wu Yifan, pull yourself together. Things haven't gotten to that point yet. Oh? Haven't gotten to that point yet? Tell me, I was already kicked out of the Huo family. How far can it go? How far do you think it can go? He pushed Su Peijian's hand away. Su Peijian took a step back. She stood back again, but her expression was even more unsightly than before. Hu Yifan, no wonder you can't beat Hu Jinyao in this state. When he was framed by you, he didn't drink to drown his sorrows. Su Peijian. Hu Yifan stood up and glared fiercely at the person in front of him. What did you say? What did I say? I said no wonder you can't beat Hu Jinyao. With your current appearance, it's impossible for you to beat him. Hu Yifan's hand was raised and was about to fall. Su Peijian didn't retreat. Come. It here. It here. She raised her face and faced Hu Yifan. Hu Yifan looked at her and suddenly put down his hand. Okay. I can't beat Hu Jinyao. I can't beat him. Since you admire him so much, you can go with him. Su Peijian sneered. You don't have to chase me away. I'll leave now. Hu Yifan, let me tell you, you can continue to drink here and continue to live a drunken life. I, Su Peijian, am blind to marry a coward like you. After saying this, she left without looking back. When Su Qingsang got off the plane, she felt the heat wave hitting her face. Rong City was located in the north. After the Dragon Boat Festival, the temperature wasn't high. City C, located in Province S, was in the middle of China. After the Dragon Boat Festival, the weather here was considered hot. It's so hot. Sun Huya was born and raised in Rong City. She couldn't stand it as soon as she got off the plane. Su Qingsang smiled and looked at the long-sleeved knitted shirt on Sun Huya's body. Director Sun, I reminded you. Yes, you did remind me, but I'm old. I'm always a little afraid of the cold. I didn't expect the weather here to be like this. It's okay. When we get to the dormitory later, change your clothes first. Then have a good rest. This time they were working with Renha Hospital in City C. It was also the largest hospital in the area. They had arranged rooms for them in the hospital dormitory, and there was a welcome banquet tonight. Okay. Sun Huya nodded and followed Su Qingsang into the car that came to pick them up. Su Qingsang didn't have much luggage. It was just a small suitcase. However, Sun Huya had a big suitcase. Su Qingsang took the initiative to help her with the suitcase. You have so few things. Sun Huya glanced at Su Qingsang. Did you bring enough clothes? Su Qingsang smiled and was a little embarrassed. My husband said that carrying too much luggage was tiring. He told me to buy whatever I need here. Tisk. Dr. Su, are you showing off your love in front of us? Ling Fei, who came with them, heard it and joked with Su Qingsang. That's right. He's showing off his love in front of us. Zheng Qinyu, who came with them, also clicked his tongue. He thought about how everyone saw Hu Jinyao personally send Su Qingsang to the airport this morning and how the two of them were inseparable at the airport. It's good to just get married. This relationship is so good. Sun Huya also teased. Su Qingsang felt more and more uncomfortable. It's not really just married. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. We've been married for almost a year. Su Qingsang was stunned when she said this. Yes. Thinking about it seriously, it was almost a year since she and Hu Jinyao got married. It would be the 1-year anniversary in about 10 days, right? If that was the case, wouldn't their wedding anniversary not be together? After all, she still had to stay here for half a month. Her heart was a little gloomy. This was their first wedding anniversary, but the two of them couldn't be together. Thinking about it seriously, they got married so casually. Maybe Hu Jinyao didn't even remember this day? Su Qingsang suddenly felt a little stifled. However, her heart couldn't stay stifled for long. In the following time, she, Sun Huya, and all the doctors who came to Rong City with them began to get busy. Renha Hospital in C City was famous and had many patients. It didn't lose to the first hospital of Rong City at all, especially since they also had cooperation with many units. On the 3rd day of their arrival, they encountered a unit that arranged for people to come for a physical examination. There were many women in this unit. With more women, there were more gynecology-related items to be examined. Su Qing-sang and Sun Huiya had originally arranged for outpatients today, but now they all went to help. After this wave of people finished the examination, almost 2 days had passed. 2 days later there was another random inspection. Even if they were here for an exchange, they all became busy. In the blink of an eye, Su Qing-sang had been here for a week. Tonight, she had to do a summary of this week's work. Sun Huiya wasn't young anymore. Such a busy day was a little too much for her. Su Qing-sang took the initiative to ask her to rest, and Sun Huiya didn't refuse. She said that she would host the exchange and cooperation meeting at night. Su Qing-sang nodded and picked up her notebook. She originally wanted to go back to the temporary office they arranged to prepare. Unexpectedly, as soon as she walked out of the corridor, she met a group of people in front of her in a hurry. The man in the lead stunned her for a moment. He held his notebook and stood there without moving. Uncle? Zhang Yichen was holding a pregnant woman in his arms. When he saw Su Qing-sang, he was stunned. Why are you here? Su Qing-sang looked at the pregnant woman in his arms. There was already blood flowing from her lower body. She waved her hand and said, let's not talk about that first. What's the situation? Not only Zhang Yichen, but there were also several soldiers standing behind him. Everyone looked nervous. She fell just now. She seems to be in danger now. Hurry up and save her. Zhang Yichen didn't have time to explain more, so he quickly explained the situation. Su Qing-sang glanced at Zhang Yichen. The first thought in her mind was that Hu Jinyao's uncle was too lucky. Why did he always encounter people who tried to blackmail him? She didn't have time to think about other things at the moment. She hurriedly waved her hand. Come on this way. Arrange for someone to do the procedure. I'll examine her first. Okay. Zhang Yichen breathed a sigh of relief and carried the pregnant woman into the consulting room Su Qing-sang arranged. Su Qing-sang pulled the curtain to examine the pregnant woman. Before the curtain was closed, Zhang Yichen called her. Qing-sang? You have to save her and the baby in her belly. Su Qing-sang glanced at him and felt the seriousness in his eyes. She nodded. She silently closed the curtain. After the examination, she quickly walked out of the room. She's in bad condition. She needs a cesarean section. I'll arrange for the operation now. Don't worry. Her life should not be in danger for now. Can you do the operation yourself? Su Qing-sang was stunned. They were here to exchange and learn. It was not impossible for her to do the operation, but it needed to be arranged by the higher-ups. I trust you. Zhang Yichen stared at her face. The trust in his eyes made Su Qing-sang unable to think about anything else. She nodded. Okay, I'll do the operation. Su Qing-sang had had cesarean sections many times. It was not a big operation for her. However, when the pregnant woman entered the operating room, she found that her condition was a bit complicated. Her blood was Rh negative. The hospital's blood bank only had 2 units of Rh negative blood. The pregnant woman had lost too much blood. At least 4 units of blood had to be transfused. She reported the situation. The only thing she could do was to try her best to save the pregnant woman's life. She didn't know how the outside coordinated. Anyway, in the time she estimated, someone sent Rh negative blood. A few hours later, Su Qing-sang came out of the operating room. She was in a strange operating room with a strange assistant and a strange person. Fortunately, they cooperated well. When she came out, she found Zhang Yichen and the other soldiers were still waiting outside. Su Qing-sang took off her mask. Zhang Yichen was already standing in front of her. How is it? How is she? Both mother and daughter are safe. Su Qing-sang saw the anxious look on Zhang Yichen's face. But the baby is less than 8 months old. It is very fragile now. She needs to stay in the incubator for a few days for observation. Okay. What about the adult? The anesthesia is still there. She will probably wake up later. Su Qing-sang glanced at Zhang Yichen. He was still in his military uniform. His chest was covered in blood, but he didn't seem to care at all. Thinking of what happened between him and her in the Hua family's old house, she felt a little awkward. Although she had been drugged and drunk before she did that, she was still Zhang Yichen's elder sister. Su Qing-sang cleared her throat to divert his attention. All right. Why were you so careless? And you ran into her again? Su Qing-sang wasn't joking. You're so lucky. You run into her every time. It's not luck. Zhang Yichen's expression was serious. He looked at Su Qing-sang with a touch of pain in his eyes. She is the family of a martyr. Last week her husband died. Su Qing-sang was stunned. She saw the pain in Zhang Yichen's eyes. He was your comrade? Zhang Yichen nodded almost imperceptibly. He was his comrade and his subordinate. Last week he died in the line of duty. Before he died, he happily told them that he was going to be a father soon. However, before he could become a father, something happened to him. His wife received the news yesterday and rushed over today. She came to take him home, but she was too emotional when she saw the cold tombstone. She accidentally fell on her way down the hill. They went back to the city. The nearest hospital was Renha Hospital, so they sent the pregnant woman here. She will be fine, right? His comrade was the only child in his family. The newborn child was the only child left behind by the other party. Su Qingsang's eyes were a little wet. She nodded and said, "Don't worry. The operation was successful. They will be fine." Zhang Yichen breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at Su Qingsang's surgical gown and asked, "Why are you here?" "Our hospital organized us to come here for a learning exchange." Su Qingsang seemed to have just realized that she was wearing a surgical gown. She awkwardly cleared her throat. "It's done. The operation here is done. I still have something to do. If you want, you can go to the nursery over there to see the baby." "Thank you, Qingsang." Zhang Yichen thanked her very seriously. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. "You're welcome. It's my job." Moreover, he was a family member of a martyr. Su Qingsang had high respect for people like him. "Well, if there's nothing else, I'll leave now. Uncle, please help yourself." She turned to leave, not noticing that Zhang Yichen's eyes lingered on her back for a few seconds. The way she called him uncle made his heart ache. He looked away and glanced at the soldiers behind him. "Let's go and see the baby." Su Qingsang had performed the operation for a few hours the night before. The next morning, the hospital considerately asked her to rest and didn't arrange any outpatient services. Su Qingsang had been busy for the past few days. She planned to go shopping this morning and buy 2 sets of clothes. The weather in Sea City had been getting hotter and hotter. She had to go through the hospital gate when she left the hospital dormitory. She was about to open the map to see if there was a department store nearby. A Hummer stopped in front of her. The body of the Hummer was painted camouflage. Su Qingsang instinctively took a step back and saw the person sitting in the car. "Uncle? You're here to see Chin Yi again?" Chin Yi was the pregnant woman from yesterday. She had woken up early this morning. Her vital signs were normal. Zhang Yichen had indeed just seen Chin Yi. He glanced at the bag in Su Qingsang's hand. "You're going out? Where are you going? I'll give you a ride." "No need. I'll call a taxi." Su Qingsang waved her hand. She didn't dare to trouble this uncle. "Are you familiar with Sea City?" "No. I am." "Get in the car." That didn't seem right. "Uncle, it's really no trouble. You can call me uncle too. Sea City is my territory. Get in the car and I'll give you a ride. Just treat it as a good host." Su Qingsang couldn't refuse him anymore. She bowed and got in Zhang Yichen's car. "Well, if that's the case, thank you, uncle." Chapter 594. Su Qingsang was still a little uncomfortable when she got into the car. She fastened her seat belt and looked out of the car window. They were all relatives, so she didn't think too much about it. However, because of what happened last time when she was drunk, she always felt a little weird when facing Zhang Yichen. Zhang Yichen was driving. He glanced at her out of the corner of his eye, then turned back to focus on driving. "Where are you going?" Su Qingsang realized that he was talking to her. "To the nearest department store." Su Qingsang didn't want to trouble him. "You can just drop me off at the nearest department store." "Department store?" "Yes." Su Qingsang cleared her throat. "Any department store will do." Zhang Yichen glanced at her and turned the steering wheel in the front seat. Sea City was a city with a long history. More than 2,000 years ago. Ancient buildings could often be seen on both sides of the street. Su Qingsang hadn't had a good look around since she came here. Looking at the scenery on both sides of the street, she was a little interested. Maybe she could have fun here for a couple of days after the exchange program? "You've never been to Sea City before?" Zhang Yichen's voice made her turn her head. She nodded and said, "Yes." She used to focus on her studies. Plus, her identity was sensitive, so she never thought about traveling or having fun. "Are you familiar with this area?" Zhang Yichen seemed to be very familiar with this place. "Yes. Our unit belongs to the S Province military. Their unit was here." Of course they were familiar with it. Su Qingsang nodded and glanced at Zhang Yichen. Maybe because he was going to see Chin Yi, he wasn't wearing his military uniform. "Are you okay? Won't this delay your business?" She felt that he was always busy. "I'm fine." I'm off today. It was still a cold voice. Su Qingsang didn't notice that Zhang Yichen's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Did he want to say that he didn't need to spend time with his girlfriend? But that wasn't the right question for her. He seemed to be 2 years older than Hu Jinyao, and he was still unmarried. Su Qingsang didn't say anything else and continued to enjoy the scenery. Fortunately, the awkward atmosphere didn't last long. Soon they arrived. This is a very famous street in Sea City. All the big department stores are here. Su Qingsang glanced at him, thanked him and got out of the car. Zhang Yichen couldn't help but call out to her, "Call me when you're done. I'll pick you up." "I don't think that's necessary." Su Qingsang quickly waved her hand. "I can take a taxi back myself. It's hard to get a taxi here. Write down my phone number. Call me when you're done." Zhang Yichen said blandly. "There's really no need." Su Qingsang wanted to say no, but Zhang Yichen had no intention of driving away. Feeling a little helpless, Su Qingsang took out her phone to record his number. She decided that she would take a taxi home later. She would never let Zhang Yichen pick her up. Zhang Yichen watched as she wrote down his number, then asked her to try it again. Hearing his phone ring, he finally let her go. After Su Qingsang left, he looked at the number displayed on the screen and saved it. He struggled for a long time just to save a name. In the end, he entered her full name, Su Qingsang. He didn't leave right away. Instead, he parked the car in the parking lot. He looked back in the direction of the department store, lost in thought. After a long time, he hit the steering wheel hard. He quickly got out of the car. Zhang Yichen told her that he didn't want to be with Su Qingsang. He just had something to buy. Yes, he had something to buy too. For example, a gift for his mother. It was almost Hu Yangxiu's birthday. When he entered the department store, Zhang Yichen wanted to punch himself in the face. What was he doing? Su Qingsang was married. She was Hu Jinyao's wife. It was useless for him to be like this. He shook his head and strode towards the outside. However, as soon as he walked outside, he felt the ground shake. Zhang Yichen's first thought was that it was an earthquake. Without thinking, he lay down, face down, grabbed the railing and covered his head and the back of his neck with one hand. The ground was still shaking violently. Suddenly, Zhang Yichen thought of something. He quickly stood up and ran into the department store. There were already people running outside. Screams could be heard all around. Zhang Yichen wanted to go through the crowd and continue inside. However, the glass door of the department store was shattered. Zhang Yichen covered his head and squatted down again. Soon it wasn't just the glass. The walls of the building began to crack. The gravel, cement, and dust on top of it fell like flying. Some people were hit by stones and some fell. Screams and howls could be heard all around. When a middle-aged man was about to be hit by a stone, Zhang Yichen quickly pulled him up. The man thanked him, but his legs were so weak that he couldn't stand up at all. Go to an open place and put your hands on your head." After saying that, Zhang Yichen looked at the scene in front of him and thought that Su Qingsang was still inside. He immediately took out his phone and called Su Qingsang, but no one answered. The surroundings were still shaking. He called again, but still no one answered. Seeing that no one was picking up the phone, he couldn't care less anymore and rushed into the department store. The shaking inside was even worse than the outside. Things kept crashing down and falling. Zhang Yichen regretted it very much. He shouldn't have asked Su Qingsang to take his phone number. He should have gone in with her. The shaking was still going on. Zhang Yichen couldn't go forward anymore. Everyone around him was screaming as they ran outside. He was the only one who walked inside. He looked at those people running outside. None of them was Su Qingsang. He became more and more anxious. The chandelier on the ceiling fell in his direction. He quickly dodged to the side and avoided it. People kept running outside, blocking his way. Zhang Yichen was anxious. He said loudly, "Don't panic. Everyone bend down, cover your head and run outside." At this moment, someone spoke, and the people who were running around blindly seemed to have found their direction. Zhang Yichen couldn't care less about those people. All his energy was now focused on finding Su Qingsang. The women's department was on the second floor. If Su Qingsang was here to buy clothes, she must be on the second floor. The stairs were already broken. Some people were so scared that they didn't dare to come down. The escalator had stopped a long time ago. But he could still go forward. Zhang Yichen exerted the physical strength he had developed in the army. He dashed up as fast as he could. Regardless of the shaking ground, he rushed straight to the most dangerous place. There were fewer people on the second floor than on the first floor. When the earthquake happened just now, everyone ran outside with all their might. Zhang Yichen didn't know where Su Qingsang was, so he could only search the clothing stores one by one. As he searched, he dodged the falling cement and dust. At the same time, he didn't forget to call Su Qingsang. He could feel the ground shaking more violently under his feet. But Su Qingsang didn't answer the phone. He was anxious, so he ran even faster. He kept calling, running, and dodging objects that might fall on him. He was in a sorry state. While he was dodging, he heard a phone ringing. It was from a shop next to him. Zhang Yichen was stunned. He dodged a shop sign that was about to fall, looked at the shop in front of him, which was blocked by broken glass and a counter. He hung up the phone and found that the ringing had stopped. He called again and found that it was ringing again. Zhang Yichen's eyes became hot. He looked at the name of the shop and immediately knew that Su Qingsang was inside. The shaking stopped at that moment. Zhang Yichen pushed the counter open and went inside. Other than the counter, there were 2 more shelves which were blocking his way. Zhang Yichen didn't hang up the phone. He heard the ringing getting louder. He walked forward and seemed to step on something. He stopped and found a female shop assistant lying under the shelf. He squatted down and found that the back of the female shop assistant's head was bleeding. She was no longer breathing. Zhang Yichen's heart skipped a beat. He felt as if his whole heart was twisting. Without thinking, he pushed the shelf away and moved the female shop assistant's body to the side. He gave the shop assistant a deep look, then looked around. Other than the female shop assistant, he didn't see anyone else. The phone was still ringing. Next to it was the fitting room. Zhang Yichen thought that Su Qingsang was here to buy clothes, so she might be trying on clothes here. Without thinking, he walked toward the fitting room. The wooden door of the fitting room had fallen. Half of it was stuck in the door. Zhang Yichen's heart was beating fast. Even though he had participated in a mission 1,000 times more dangerous than this, it didn't make him feel better. He pulled the door open forcefully and saw Su Qingsang lying there. She was holding a piece of clothing in her hand. She seemed to have lost consciousness. There were no windows in the fitting room, and the electricity in the building had been cut off. He could only see Su Qingsang's face with the dim light coming in from outside. There was no blood on her face, but there was a lot of dust on it. Her legs were curled up, and her body was leaning against a chair. There was no obvious blood stain. He put his hand on the tip of her nose and found that she was still breathing. He was more or less relieved. Su Qingsang? Su Qingsang? Zhang Yichen called her twice, but there was no response. He squatted down beside her, about to carry her and leave, but unexpectedly, there was another violent shaking behind him. He saw the lamp above his head shake and was about to fall. It was a critical moment. Zhang Yichen hurriedly picked up the door that had just fallen and placed it above the 2 of them. As expected, the lamp fell, and then there was an even more violent shaking. Su Qingsang's body was leaning against the chair, and Zhang Yichen was holding the door. No matter how many things fell from above, he didn't move at all. When the shaking stopped, Zhang Yichen found that he and Su Qingsang were trapped. He didn't know how many pieces of cement and wall had fallen outside. The fitting room was completely blocked. The shaking continued. Zhang Yichen gritted his teeth and held the door. He held Su Qingsang up with one hand and let her lean against him. The ground was shaking under their feet, and the dust kept falling above their heads. Zhang Yichen didn't dare to move, and he couldn't. At this moment, he was even glad that the shaking just now had shaken the door off. Otherwise, the 2 of them might have been buried. After a long time, the shaking finally stopped. Zhang Yichen's back was numb. He tried to look around. He pushed the door against one of the cracked walls. In this way, the fitting room formed a very narrow triangle. He took advantage of this gap and squatted down again. Qingsang? Su Qingsang? Still no response. He gritted his teeth and reached out to the back of Su Qingsang's head. Sure enough, he felt a lump there. It was probably hit by something just now. Su Qingsang, wake up. Wake up. It was very dark inside. Zhang Yichen took out his phone and turned on the light. In the dust and stones, he kept calling Su Qingsang's name. After a long time, Su Qingsang finally regained some consciousness. She was very uncomfortable and dizzy. The voice that kept calling her sounded a little familiar. She opened her eyes and saw a dirty face under the dim blue light. Su Qingsang was startled and instinctively stepped back. However, before she could step back, she felt a sharp pain in the back of her head. She snorted and instinctively raised her hand to cover the back of her head. Qingsang, you're awake? Zhang Yichen breathed a sigh of relief. The familiar voice made Su Qingsang look at the person in front of her again. Uncle? Why was he here? And Su Qingsang almost instantly remembered. This is an earthquake? She had always known. This province was a province with a lot of earthquakes. Every year there would be earthquakes from time to time. However, she never thought that she would encounter an earthquake in her lifetime. Yes, it's an earthquake. Zhang Yichen looked at her and didn't miss that he had been touching the back of her head. You seem to have been hit by something. Are you okay? Su Qingsang's voice was a little hoarse. She rubbed the back of her head and felt that it was very painful. She also remembered that she had thought of buying a few clothes casually. After shopping for a while, she directly chose this shop. She liked the clothes and was about to try them on, but she didn't expect that something like this would happen before she could change. She shook her head. It was a little painful, but fortunately she didn't feel nauseous. There shouldn't be any internal injuries. She tried to stand up and realized what was in front of her. There was a chair behind her. Her bag was still on the chair. In front of her was Zhang Yichen. There was a door panel behind Zhang Yichen. The door panel was stuck between the stone and the wall, forming a triangle. The space was very small and Zhang Yichen blocked most of it. She was almost sitting against him. If she wanted to stand up, she would definitely bump into Zhang Yichen. Su Qingsang didn't know how to react for a moment. She tried to move her limbs. Fortunately, she could still move them. She couldn't help but look up at Zhang Yichen. His face was completely gray and so was his hair. He didn't look good. One of his arms was supporting the side of the door panel so that it wouldn't fall. He was still holding a phone in his other hand. The light from the phone didn't make the space completely dark. Why are you here? I came to find you. Zhang Yichen's voice was a little cold. Su Qingsang wasn't stupid. She had guessed it before and this was just a confirmation. You came to save me? Yes. Zhang Yichen didn't deny it. Su Qingsang looked at him. Her first reaction was that he came to save her because she was Hu Jinyao's wife. Her second reaction was that he was a soldier. This was his business to begin with. Thank you. You're welcome. After a very polite conversation, Su Qingsang didn't know what else to say. She suddenly remembered that she had brought her bag with her to try on clothes. Where was her bag? She had put it on the chair, but now the chair was empty. It must have moved during the earthquake. With the light above her head, she soon saw it. Her bag was buried in the pile of stones next to the chair. Su Qingsang took out her phone. She was glad that she had a good habit of charging her phone every day before going out. The battery was full. She swiped the screen and saw more than a dozen missed calls, all from Zhang Yichen. Did you call me? Yes. Zhang Yichen nodded. Only now did he have time to think about calling the police for help. However, he was afraid that no one would come now. The earthquake had just happened, so the police must have been ringing off the hook. It would take some time for the higher-ups to make arrangements. He just hoped that it would be faster. He wanted to tell Su Qingsang that it was useless to call the police now, but he didn't expect that she would call Hu Jinyao. Zhang Yichen forced himself to avert his eyes. However, the space was so small that he couldn't stop looking at her even if he wanted to. Before Su Qingsang could pull out Hu Jinyao's phone, the earthquake started again. Her hand shook and she could barely hold her phone. She was scared and couldn't help but look up. There was the sound of things being smashed above the door. She could even feel that the space they were in was shaking more and more violently. She couldn't help but want to grab something to stand up. Don't move. Zhang Yichen was afraid that the door would fall down, so he kept holding it with one hand in his back. He looked at Su Qingsang and said in a very soft voice, "Lean on me quick. Don't move." Su Qingsang didn't dare to move, but she didn't approach Zhang Yichen. Instead, she leaned her body tightly against the chair. She held the phone in her hand tightly. Zhang Yichen's phone rang. He glanced at Su Qingsang and picked it up. The call was from the army, saying that there was an earthquake and asking him to come back as soon as possible. They needed to join the rescue. Sorry, I can't come now. Zhang Yichen's voice was very soft. He glanced at Su Qingsang from the corner of his eyes and then looked away. I'm trapped here in Chunwei department store. I can't get out for the time being. What? The voice on the other end of the line sounded like he couldn't believe it. After asking for Zhang Yichen's location, the other side said that they would send people to rescue him. Zhang Yichen told him the address and the situation in front of him. After hanging up, he looked at Su Qingsang. Don't worry. Wait for them to come. When they come, we'll be safe. Su Qingsang nodded. At this time, she could only calm down. The aftershocks were still going on. Su Qingsang endured the pain of the shaking and called Hu Jinyao. No one answered the phone. Su Qingsang thought about the time. He should be in a morning meeting. She called again, but before she could pick up, a new round of shaking began. The sound of the phone began to become unstable. Su Qingsang heard Hu Jinyao's voice coming from the other end of the line. Qingsang, Jinyao, I As soon as he said the word I, the phone was cut off. Su Qingsang looked at the phone screen with a conflicted expression. She couldn't believe that the signal was cut off at this time. The ground was still shaking. Su Qingsang even had a feeling that she would fall immediately. She couldn't help but look up at Zhang Yichen. It's normal for the phone to have no signal during an earthquake. Wait a minute. Maybe it will recover later. Later? Su Qingsang didn't dare to think about it. She looked at the narrow environment in front of her and the light from Zhang Yichen's phone. Can we get out now? The shaking came from time to time. Not every shaking was very violent, but it made people feel even more uncomfortable. Zhang Yichen didn't answer her question. He tried to move his back. From time to time, the sound of things falling on the door could be heard. Those sounds could only make people feel more and more uneasy. He glanced at Su Qingsang and said, I'm afraid we can't get out for the time being. Now we can only wait for the earthquake to stop or for someone to come and save us. He didn't know how many pieces of wall and cement were pressed against the outside. He could only see that the door had been blocked. He didn't know what the situation outside was either. He could only guess. But what he knew was that they wouldn't be able to get out of here for a while. Su Qingsang looked at him holding the door. Are you tired? Why don't I do it? Zhang Yichen glanced at her and didn't say anything. The shaking seemed to have stopped for a moment. Su Qingsang tried to move her feet, but the space in front of her was too narrow. She couldn't stand up at all. She clenched her phone, looked at the entrance of the fitting room and said, Why don't we try and see if we can get out of here? As soon as she finished speaking, the shaking became even stronger. Su Qingsang couldn't help but turn pale. Stay there, lean against that chair. Don't move, Zhang Yichen said in a low voice. Zhang Yichen said in a low voice. Su Qingsang didn't dare to move. She leaned against the chair tightly, using this action to calm her heart. They didn't even have to wait for her to get out. They might not even be able to make it through the current situation. Even if they did get out, if another earthquake like this happened, they might be crushed to death as soon as they got out. She had seen many deaths, but she never thought that one day she would be in a situation like this. The huge wave of shaking finally stopped. It was so quiet that Su Qingsang could hear her own heartbeat. She didn't have time to feel lucky that she survived this time. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Zhang Yichen didn't look too well. Uncle, are you okay? She looked at Zhang Yichen from head to toe and saw that his arm was bleeding. When the shaking was the strongest, Zhang Yichen only wanted to protect Su Qingsang from being hit. He held the door and bore most of the weight, along with the falling pieces of cement. However, he didn't expect that a piece of cement would hit his arm when it was shaking. Its sharp side had cut a wound on his arm. It was bleeding. Chapter 595. Are you hurt? Su Qingsang looked at his arm and quickly realized that. It's nothing. While speaking, Zhang Yichen tried to move his back. Something kept falling from the top of the door. It didn't shake anymore. He put the door back in place and held it tight. After doing this, he relaxed and sat on the ground. He was tall and small. Sitting like this, he was closer to Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang didn't have the time to care about the distance between them. She looked at his bleeding wound. Let me bandage it for you. No, it's nothing. I still need to bandage it. What if it gets infected? As Su Qingsang spoke, she rummaged through her bag again. There was a tissue in it. She found it and wiped the blood off Zhang Yichen's hand. She saw the wound clearly. It was a bit deep and seemed to be serious. He said he was fine. Su Qingsang couldn't help but look at him again, then leaned forward a little. Don't say no. It's a small wound, but you have to be careful at a time like this. She was a doctor, so it was easy for her to do this. There were no other tools in the room. She first used a tissue to clean his wound. Looking at the piece of red flesh that had been turned over, she felt the pain. There was no gauze here, but the shirt she had just brought in seemed to be made of cotton. It was dirty now. She thought for a while, then tore the bottom of the shirt into pieces, wrapped the wound with a tissue and tied it with a piece of cloth. I'm sorry. We don't have much space here, so we can only do this. When you get out of here, we can bandage it again. She spoke as she tied up his wound. The two of them were very close. There was dust all around them, but Zhang Yichen could see through her dusty face and see what was inside. For some reason, his heart was beating fast. He tried to turn his face away. It's done. Su Qingsang withdrew her hand and stepped back instinctively. However, she accidentally bumped into a chair. She snorted. Careful. Zhang Yichen held her with his uninjured hand. Thank you. Su Qingsang thanked him in a low voice. Zhang Yichen withdrew his hand and said calmly, Thank you, It's nothing. It's my duty. Su Qingsang actually wanted to thank him. If he hadn't been there to block most of the falling cement blocks with the door, she would have been crushed to death. The space was small, so Su Qingsang and Zhang Yichen didn't have much space to move around. Such a scene undoubtedly made her uncomfortable. She couldn't help but take out her phone and try calling Hu Jinyao again. This time there was no signal. Su Qingsang was frustrated that she couldn't get through. She realized that it might not be suitable for her to go out for an exchange next time. She had only gone out twice in total. One time she encountered a mudslide and the other time she encountered an earthquake. What kind of disaster physique was this? During an earthquake, the Earth's crust will move violently and the magnetic field will be chaotic, which will affect the phone signal. Zhang Yichen's voice brought her back to reality. She lowered her head and realized that she had been calling Hu Jinyao. She shook her head and put her phone back into her bag. Forget it. I'll just use it as a light. You can use mine when your phone runs out of battery. Zhang Yichen didn't object. It was so quiet that Su Qingsang couldn't hear a single sound. She thought of the shop assistant who gave her the clothes when she came in to try on the clothes. Right. There seems to be a shop assistant outside. Did you see her when you came in? Actually, there were two of them. The other shop assistant had gone to get the clothes that she had her eyes on, so there was only one shop assistant left. I saw her. Zhang Yichen's voice was very soft. He glanced at Su Qingsang, and the look in his eyes made Su Qingsang's heart skip a beat. When I came to find you just now, she was already not breathing. She must have been hit by something. The earthquake came too suddenly. They didn't even have time to react. Su Qingsang bit her lip. She didn't know what to say at this moment. Life was so fragile. She had seen so many births and deaths, but she still couldn't help but feel sad. The shop assistant had just been happily recommending the new summer clothes to her. She had been talking to her, but now she had stopped breathing. She was not far from her. Su Qingsang's eyes were a little red. She blinked and tried to suppress the emotion. The light in the small space was dim, but Zhang Yichen didn't miss the look on her face. He tightened his grip on her hand, then loosened it and turned his face away as if nothing had happened. Su Qingsang didn't have much time to feel sad. She quickly began to think about the problem in front of her. Will we stay here for a long time? Not necessarily. Zhang Yichen glanced in the direction of the fitting room's door. It had been shaking so violently just now. He didn't know what the situation outside was like. The door was blocked and there were gravel outside. He could try to move the gravel away, but if there was an aftershock, it would be very dangerous to dig from the inside to the outside. Can we only wait for someone to come and save us? Zhang Yichen glanced at her and put the phone in her hand. He turned around and wanted to try to move the stones. However, as soon as he moved, he could feel dust and debris falling from the top of his head. Stop. Stop. Su Qingsang was frightened. She quickly stopped him and said, "We should wait for someone to come and save us." Zhang Yichen glanced at her. This was indeed the only way. He put the door above the two of them again. At this moment he was even glad that the door of the fitting room was made of wood, and the quality was good. There was another silence. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say to him, and she didn't know what she could say. In such a closed space, a man and a woman alone. Su Qingsang felt a little dizzy. It would be great if the person trapped with her was Hu Jinyao. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang suddenly shook off the idea. She didn't want Hu Jinyao to be trapped here as well. Thinking of Hu Jinyao, Su Qingsang's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know when those people would come to save her, nor did she know when she would be able to get out. If she died here, she would never see Hu Jinyao again. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang suddenly couldn't sit still. She hadn't formally confessed to Hu Jinyao. She hadn't told Hu Jinyao. This year of marriage had made her fall in love with him. He was no longer the man she had randomly kidnapped to marry. Everything about him made her fascinated and even loved him to the core. However, she hadn't let Hu Jinyao know yet. Most importantly, she hadn't given birth to Hu Jinyao's child yet. If she really died here, then this matter would become her greatest regret. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang took out her phone again. She tried to call Hu Jinyao again, but she still couldn't get through. She sent a message instead. Zhang Yichen watched her movements. He sat across from her and couldn't see what she was sending, but he knew that it was for Hu Jinyao. He felt a little sad. He turned his face away, not looking at her. There's no signal. Your message can't be sent. I know. Su Qingsang nodded and said without looking up, I'm thinking that if I die here, I'll write my last words. She said it casually. After all, she had been in the hospital for so many years. She had seen both good and bad things. It would be her turn to die eventually. It was just a matter of time. Zhang Yichen grabbed her hand that was sending the message. She was stunned for a moment and found that he had taken her phone. He didn't look at her phone. He just stared at her face and said, "You won't die here." He was confident. Who knows? The earthquake came so suddenly. I don't know how many people will die. If we don't wait until someone comes to save us. Someone will definitely come to save us. Zhang Yichen's voice was very firm. Looking at him, Su Qingsang somehow believed what he said, but, "Give me the phone. I told you won't die here. Someone will definitely come to save us." "I believe you." Su Qingsang nodded. "I believe that I won't die here. But I want to leave a message for Hua Jinyao." Zhang Yichen understood what she meant. He reached out his hand again and returned the phone to her. Su Qingsang took the phone and said casually, "People. They will die sooner or later. I believe that we will be saved, but I'm also prepared for the worst." Zhang Yichen looked at her lowered eyes. Because of the light from the phone, her long eyelashes cast a circle of dark shadows on her eyelids. She was very focused on sending the message. She bit her lip as if she was thinking about what to say. She was prepared to die. Before she died, she wanted to leave a message for the person she loved the most in the world. He blinked and felt a little sad. Looking at Su Qingsang, he made up his mind. He wouldn't let her die here even if he had to pay with his life. Su Qingsang not only sent messages to Hua Jinyao, but also to Li Qianxue, Su Yusin, Su Qinghui, Xiang Kaiping and Shi Mengwan. She didn't know when the signal would come back. She didn't even know if they could see the message. But there was a record on the phone. If she really died, she hoped that they would see it. She sent the message to everyone she cared about. Finally, she looked at the screen in her hand. It was on the call window between her and Hua Jinyao. There was only one sentence on the screen. "Hua Jinyao, when I go back this time, let's have a child, okay?" In the 31 years of Hua Jinyao's life, he lived a lonely life. He was hated by his birth mother and ignored by his father. Although old Master Hua cared about him, it couldn't replace the love of his parents. If he had a child, then even if she was gone, he believed that the child could be with him. Su Qingsang clenched the phone and sent the last 6 words. "Hua Jinyao, I love you." Looking at the message waiting to be sent, she calmly put the phone back into her bag. When she looked up, she found that Zhang Yichen was still staring at her. She cleared her throat uncomfortably. "Don't you have anyone you want to talk to? For example, a girlfriend or family?" Zhang Yichen looked at her without saying anything. He did. How could he not? He had lived for more than 30 years, but the first time he fell in love with a married woman. And she was the wife of his nephew. It was so ironic. He was destined to be unable to say those words. No. Why not? Didn't he have anything to say to his parents and family? Zhang Yichen looked at an unknown spot behind Su Qingsang. His voice was very low. "From the day I put on the uniform, I was prepared to sacrifice." Since he had decided from the first day he might die on the battlefield one day or he might die in an accident one day. His family naturally knew that, so there was no such thing as a will. All the members of the Zhang family, whether it was him or his father, were prepared for such a thing. If there was anything he regretted, it was that he didn't die on the battlefield. Also, his eyes fell on Su Qingsang's face and he found that she was a little touched. He suddenly felt uncomfortable, so he cleared his throat and said, "You should rest for a while. Save your energy. I don't know how long we have to wait." Su Qingsang was indeed very touched. She didn't have much contact with soldiers, but in her mind they were all superior. Zhang Yichen's words shocked her. She couldn't help but look at him a few more times. She should listen to him and rest first to save her energy. After all, they didn't know how long it would take for the rescue team to arrive. Su Qingsang's head had been hit just now. She couldn't help but fall asleep while sitting. Zhang Yichen didn't sleep. He couldn't sleep. He looked at Su Qingsang. It had been about 3 hours since the earthquake. The golden time for rescue was 72 hours. 3 days. They had to find a way to get out of here within 3 days, or someone would come to rescue them within 3 days. There was no signal on the phone, the passage was blocked, and there was no way to contact the outside world in this enclosed space. Zhang Yichen's brows were tightly furrowed, and he didn't have the mood to think more. He dimmed the light of his phone and put it in his pocket. This way he could have a light source and save electricity. Feeling that there was no more vibration outside, he closed his eyes and let himself rest for a while. However, this kind of rest didn't last long. A huge aftershock began again. Zhang Yichen opened his eyes immediately. He looked at the door panel above him first. It was shaking but not violently. He was at a good angle, and the door panel covered him and Su Qingsang perfectly without suffocating them. But he knew that this wouldn't last long. He could feel that the air here was getting thinner and thinner. Su Qingsang? Su Qingsang? He called Su Qingsang twice but she didn't respond. Zhang Yichen's face suddenly became anxious. Su Qingsang? Su Qingsang, wake up, wake up. Su Qingsang didn't wake up. She was woken up by Zhang Yichen just now, but in fact the injury on the back of her head still affected her to a certain extent. In addition, the air here was getting thinner and thinner. Zhang Yichen was anxious and reached out to shake her arm. But Su Qingsang didn't react at all. Her eyes were tightly closed and she seemed to be in a deep sleep. Zhang Yichen was anxious. He looked around. There were so many stones outside. Could they really hold on for 3 days? Su Qingsang? Time passed bit by bit, but Su Qingsang showed no signs of waking up. Zhang Yichen called out a few times but there was no response. He knew that in the face of such a disaster, the higher-ups would definitely organize a rescue as soon as possible. But now that the aftershocks were continuous, even if they wanted to come and rescue, it would take time. Moreover, how could he let them avoid these aftershocks first? Su Qingsang? He called out again but Su Qingsang still didn't respond. He raised his hand and looked at the time. It had already been 12 hours since the earthquake. In other words, it was already night, and Su Qingsang hadn't woken up yet. Zhang Yichen tried a few more times to touch Su Qingsang's forehead and found that her forehead was very hot. She actually had a fever at such a time? Su Qingsang? Su Qingsang? Zhang Yichen called out her name, but Su Qingsang didn't respond at all. The surroundings were still shaking. Zhang Yichen had no choice but to help her up and make her sit more comfortably against the chair. He turned around and looked at the exit just now. It was now full of boulders, cement blocks and wall blocks. He tried to push a stone outside but just like before, stones immediately began to fall from above. It didn't work at all. If he really did that, he would probably be smashed to death before he could get out. After locking the door again, Zhang Yichen sat back in his original position. His gaze fell on Su Qingsang's face. Her forehead was burning hot and she was unconscious. Zhang Yichen patted her shoulder, but Su Qingsang still didn't wake up. Her face was pale, and her lips were beginning to turn white and dry. Su Qingsang needed to drink water now, but where was the water here? Zhang Yichen looked at Su Qingsang's face for a long time. As time passed, her breathing became heavier and her face became paler. This discovery made him frown so hard that he could almost squeeze a mosquito to death. Especially when Su Qingsang unconsciously licked her lips and furrowed her brows. After staring at Su Qingsang's face for a long time, he suddenly took out a Swiss Army knife from his pocket. His eyes didn't leave Su Qingsang's face, but he raised the knife and slashed it down. Bright red blood flowed out. Su Qingsang woke up in the temporary tent set up by the hospital. The moment she opened her eyes, she thought she was hallucinating. She actually saw Hu Jinyao? This didn't make sense. She closed her eyes again. She was still a little unconscious. But what she remembered was that there was an earthquake. There was an earthquake. She was locked in that small fitting room with Zhang Yichen. What happened after that? She remembered that she seemed to have fallen asleep. When she was in a daze, she felt very uncomfortable, very hot, and very thirsty. But then someone gave her water to drink. She drank the water, felt much better, and fell asleep again. What happened after that? And where was Zhang Yichen? Why did she remember that she seemed to be with Zhang Yichen? She opened her eyes again and this time the person she saw was still Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao. Qingsang, you're awake. You're awake? Hu Jinyao hugged her tightly and forcefully. He used almost all of his strength on her. Su Qingsang felt a little pain from his hug and felt a little uncomfortable. She blinked and motioned for Hu Jinyao to let go of her. But how could Hu Jinyao let go of her? You're awake. That's great. You're awake. That's great. She was awake. Su Qingsang wanted to speak, but she found that her throat was uncomfortably hoarse. Hu Jinyao let go of her, took a cup from the side and put it to her lips. Come, don't speak first. You must be feeling very uncomfortable now. Drink some water first. Su Qingsang didn't speak. She did feel very thirsty. She drank all the water in the cup and felt much better. Only then did she look at Hu Jinyao. At first glance, she realized that Hu Jinyao didn't look good. His eyes were bloodshot and his face didn't look good. His chin and cheeks were covered with bruises and he looked dispirited. You. Su Qingsang raised her hand to touch Hu Jinyao's face. How did you become like this? Did I become ugly? Yes. I'm so ugly. Su Qing-sang nodded, but there was no disgust in her eyes. Instead, there was a hint of heartache. Wu Jinyao smiled. He held Su Qing-sang's hand and kissed it. Yes, I'm so ugly now. Do you dislike me? No. Su Qing-sang shook her head. You're the most handsome in my heart. Really? Of course it's true. Su Qing-sang nodded, but found that this movement made her a little dizzy. Don't talk. Have a good rest first. Hu Jinyao supported her and let her continue to lie down. Su Qing-sang was about to lie down, but she didn't forget to ask him, by the way, why are you here? How long has it been? How's it outside? And, don't talk. Rest. I'll tell you what you want to know slowly. Su Qing-sang was silent. She looked around and realized that she was the only one in the tent. I received your call that day. But you hung up. At first, Hu Jinyao thought that Su Qing-sang had accidentally pressed the wrong button. However, he had a feeling of unease before. He immediately called Su Qing-sang back. However, Su Qing-sang didn't pick up the phone. Not only did she not pick up the phone, but she also couldn't get through to him. He became more and more worried. Before he could continue calling back, Yang Wenchang brought him a piece of bad news that shocked him. There was an earthquake in Sea City. He was completely dumbfounded. He originally thought that something might have happened to Su Qing-sang, but he didn't expect it to be an earthquake. He couldn't care less about anything else. He kept trying to contact her, but it was useless. Wu Jinyao knew that there was an earthquake here, so how could he sit still? He wanted to rush to Sea City, but no one was allowed to come. Other than the rescue, there were also volunteers. If anyone else came, they would only cause trouble. Wu Jinyao wasn't here to cause trouble. He was here to find someone. He immediately donated a large sum of supplies to the disaster area. Then he used this sum of supplies to come to Sea City. After he arrived, he began to ask the relevant rescue personnel to look for Su Qing-sang. The hospital where Su Qing-sang was at was the largest hospital in Sea City. It should be easy to find her. It wasn't easy for him to contact the hospital and Sun Huiya. However, she told him that Su Qing-sang had left early in the morning and she didn't know where she was now. When the earthquake happened, the doctor who came with Sun Huiya was in the clinic. Her clinic was on the first floor, so when the earthquake happened, she immediately ran out. Chapter 596. Su Qing-sang wasn't in the hospital and she couldn't be contacted. Su Qing-sang's condition was unknown. Every piece of news stimulated Hu Jinyao's nerves, especially when he found out that Su Qing-sang had gone out to buy clothes. He really wanted to slap himself. When Su Qing-sang wanted to pack her luggage, he should have asked her to bring more clothes and buy things in Sea City. It was all right now. She was the only one in trouble. Sea City was so big and there were so many department stores. Hu Jinyao had no idea which department store he should go to find Su Qing-sang. At this moment he thought of Zhang Yichen. He knew that Zhang Yichen's unit was here. It would be much easier for him to find Zhang Yichen than to find Zhang Yichen himself. However, when he contacted Zhang Yichen's unit, he found out that Zhang Yichen was not in the unit. Not only was he not in the unit, but he seemed to have experienced an earthquake as well. Wu Jinyao had a bad feeling. That kind of premonition came from the fact that both Zhang Yichen and Su Qing-sang had encountered an earthquake at the same time. They lost contact with Su Qing-sang for 2 days and 2 nights. From the moment Hu Jinyao received the news to the moment he lost contact with Su Qing-sang for 2 days, Hu Jinyao felt as if his heart was being grasped by someone. He couldn't calm down at all. Whenever he thought that something might happen to Su Qing-sang, he couldn't stay calm. He had no choice but to look for his great-aunt Hu Yangxiu. Hu Yangxiu was also anxious, because Zhang Yichen was also in trouble. Who was Zhang Yichen? He was the youngest son of the district commander, and was already a senior colonel. The last thing Hu Yangxiu heard was that Zhang Yichen was trapped in Chunwei department store. There were 3 Chunwei department stores in Sea City. She wondered which one Zhang Yichen would end up in. There was no signal on the phone. When the signal was restored, they began to locate Zhang Yichen. Hu Jinyao's heart skipped a beat when he found out that Zhang Yichen was in the department store. He trusted Zhang Yichen and Su Qing-sang. He believed that it was impossible for the two of them to have any interaction. That was until he got the exact news that Zhang Yichen was buried in a department store. He rushed over immediately. He didn't know why he had to go there. He believed that Zhang Yichen couldn't be with Su Qing-sang. However, when he finally found Zhang Yichen, Hu Jinyao felt lucky. She was glad that Zhang Yichen was with Su Qing-sang at that time. For the rest of his life he would never forget what he had seen, that scene, and, Jinyao? Su Qing-sang glanced at Hu Jinyao, wondering why he was daydreaming again. Hu Jinyao stopped thinking and looked into Su Qing-sang's eyes. The corners of his mouth twitched. What happened? Now that Su Chingsang had woken up, she naturally remembered something. I remember that I was with Uncle. How is he? Su Chingsang was very grateful to Zhang Yichen. If he hadn't arrived in time and shielded her with the door, she would have been crushed to death. It was a fact that Zhang Yichen had saved her life. He's fine. Huo Jinyao looked at Su Chingsang's face and asked the question. Why are you with Uncle? Su Chingsang had just woken up when she was hit on the back of her head. At that time she thought she was fine, but in fact she wasn't in good spirits at the moment, so she didn't notice the slight jealousy in Huo Jinyao's words. I was going to buy some clothes. Uncle happened to come to the hospital to see a pregnant woman. He said that he was familiar with Sea City, so he gave me a ride. Huo Jinyao didn't say anything. He just held Su Chingsang's hand and said, Uncle came to the hospital to see a pregnant woman? Su Chingsang nodded. Thinking of Chen Yi, she suddenly sat up again. How are Director Sun and the others? Are they okay? And Chen Yi? All right. Don't worry about others for now. Huo Jinyao held her hand and pressed her back. You're very weak now. What you need to do is to rest well. Are they all okay? All? Director Sun, Ling Fei, Dr. Chen, and Dr. Li are all okay? They're all okay. Huo Jinyao nodded. When the earthquake came, Dr. Sun and the others happened to be in the clinic on the first floor. They ran outside as soon as the earthquake happened. So they're all right. That's good. Su Chingsang breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that Director Sun and the others were all right. Where are they now? There were a lot of casualties. They're all going to help now. Huo Jinyao looked at Su Chingsang and suddenly gently hugged her body in his arms. Chingsang, no matter where there's such an exchange in the future, don't go. Okay. He didn't say anything else, but Su Chingsang could understand what he meant. She had only gone out twice in total. One was a mudslide and the other was an earthquake. Her luck couldn't be any better. How can there be a next time? Su Chingsang had the same thought, but she really didn't think that her luck would always be so good. These are all coincidences. The probability is low. I don't care. Anyway, you're not allowed to go next time. Okay. Next time, I won't go anywhere other than to study. Okay. You can't study either. Huo Jinyao couldn't describe his feelings when he found out that there was an earthquake in the place where Su Chingsang was. He never wanted to experience that kind of feeling again in his life. Su Chingsang looked at him and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. There seemed to be a hint of helplessness. She was still a little listless. Huo Jinyao got up and took a bowl of porridge from the side. There's only this now. Simple porridge. Boil it with boiling water. Make do with it. There were still aftershocks from time to time, and there were still many disaster victims who hadn't been settled down. These were brought over by Huo Jinyao. The porridge could be drunk with boiling water, but the taste couldn't be compared to the porridge at home. Why would I care about these things now? It's good enough that I have something to eat. She was indeed hungry. She watched as Huo Jinyao brought the porridge over. By the way, how many days has it been since the earthquake? Today is the 3rd day. The 4th day? Su Chingsang blinked. Then how many days was I trapped in there? Why don't I remember? 2 days. Huo Jinyao really felt a lingering fear when he said this. You were trapped for 2 days. After you were rescued and confirmed that your life was not in danger, you were placed here. After you were rescued, you slept for an entire day. Su Chingsang nodded. She wanted to ask more, but Huo Jinyao had already started feeding her porridge. She could only eat first. The porridge didn't taste good, but at this time, under such conditions, Su Chingsang couldn't be picky. After finishing a bowl of porridge, Huo Jinyao put the bowl aside. Is there anything else you want to eat? I'll ask Yang Wenchang to try his best to send it over. The first batch of supplies were instant noodles, bread, biscuits, and so on. It would take some time for a hot meal to be eaten. It's okay. I understand. Su Chingsang waved her hand. She listened for a while. From time to time, she could hear the sound of sirens and people coming and going outside. Where are we now? The empty space outside the hospital. They're all temporary tents. How's the hospital? Can't they be used? Of course not. The aftershocks are still there. It's too dangerous to stay inside. Su Chingsang pursed her lips. Are the casualties very high? Yes. Huo Jinyao nodded. The statistics showed that there were already hundreds of people. There were still those who were missing or not found. Su Chingsang was in a bad mood, and Huo Jinyao didn't know what to say. In the face of such a disaster, human strength was too small. Huo Jinyao, I feel terrible. For those who left, those who were missing, and those who were injured. I know. Hu Jingyao wasn't in a good mood either. He was born into a good family. Other than the kidnapping when he was young, which caused him to suffer all kinds of torture. It was also the first time he had seen such a tragic situation. I've already asked someone to send another batch of supplies over. However, we can't help with the rescue for the time being. They're more professional than us. Don't think too much. Rest well. Your body is still very weak. Su Qingsang looked at him and nodded heavily. The wind and rain were raging outside, but inside the small tent, it formed a small world of its own. Su Qingsang leaned her face against Hu Jinyao's chest. Her eyes were a little moist. She had survived. She had survived when she thought she was going to die. However, there were some people who weren't as lucky as she was. Hu Jinyao. Yes. I sent you a message. Did you see it? No. But I found your phone. It's over there, but it's out of battery. What message did you send? Hu Jinyao. Let's go back and have a child. Hu Jinyao was stunned for a moment. He lowered his head to look at Su Qingsang and she happened to look up at him. Her eyes were glistening with tears. There seemed to be a lot to say. Didn't you say we'll talk about it later? But I don't want to be late. Su Qingsang bit her lip. I almost died this time. When I was about to die, I was thinking that I hadn't given you a child yet. She wrapped her arms around his waist and rubbed her little face against his chest. At that time, I really regretted it and I really regretted it. If I had a child, then if I was gone, that... She couldn't finish her sentence because Hu Jinyao covered her lips. That day won't come. Looking into Su Qingsang's eyes, he leaned over and kissed her on the eyelid. Qingsang, that day won't come. I won't let you leave me. But, no buts. Hu Jinyao's voice was firm. You are you and the child is the child. No one can replace you. Even if you give birth to a child for me. I don't need anyone else. I only need you. Su Qingsang's eyes turned red again. She blinked her eyes and resisted the urge to cry. After being married to Hu Jinyao for a year, these were the most touching words she had ever heard from him. But I want a child. A child that belongs to me and you. We'll have children. Hu Jinyao pressed his forehead against hers. Don't think too much. When your body recovers, when we return to Rong City, we'll have as many as you want. We'll have as many as you want. Okay. He didn't object. Su Qingsang wanted to cry again. She nodded and said in a trembling voice, let's have two, okay? One boy and one girl. Okay. It's best to have a boy first and then a girl. That way the older brother can protect the younger sister. Okay. I'll listen to you. Hu Jinyao wrapped his arms around her waist. Su Qingsang looked at him and said softly, it's not bad to have twins. Yes. We'll solve it at once, right? Yes. Su Qingsang smiled with tears in her eyes. When the time comes, we'll each hold one and go out together. We'll take them to see the fallen leaves in autumn, and we'll take them to see the cherry blossoms in spring. Okay. Hu Jinyao didn't object. He agreed to everything. Su Qingsang glanced at him. She knew that Hu Jinyao would definitely be a good father. The two of them talked for a while. Su Qingsang yawned as if she wanted to sleep again. Hu Jinyao knew that she was still very weak, so he let go of her and helped her lie down carefully. You should rest first. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it when you wake up. Su Qingsang nodded and lay down again. Just as she was about to fall asleep, she suddenly thought of something. By the way, is Uncle really okay? Hu Jinyao didn't answer her question. He shook his head and said, he's fine. You really care about him. This time, Su Qingsang heard the jealousy in his words. She couldn't help but laugh and reached out to hold his hand. He saved my life. If it weren't for him, I would have died. You? Hu Jinyao wanted to ask her if she remembered. But Su Qingsang was indeed sleepy again. She had a head injury and was still on an intravenous drip. All these things made her feel sleepy easily. Uncle is really a good person. Her eyes had already begun to close. Then her voice became even softer. When the earthquake happened, he came to me. He saved me. Jinyao, I want to thank him. She didn't say anything else. She had already fallen asleep. Hu Jinyao stared at her face, not sure how much she could remember. He waited until Su Qingsang was completely asleep. He tucked her in and turned to go to a tent not far away. When he entered the tent, Hu Yangxiu was guarding Zhang Yichen. Seeing Hu Jinyao come, she stood up. Jinyao, is Qingsang okay? She's awake. She's fine now. Su Qingsang was hit in the head by a stone and had a slight concussion. In addition, being buried in the ruins caused a certain degree of lack of oxygen. It was indeed a little dangerous before. But the doctor said that as long as she woke up, she would be fine. Now that she was awake, she should be fine. It's good that she's fine. It's good that she's fine. Hu Yangxiu was relieved. When she turned to look at Zhang Yichen, who was lying on the bed, her expression turned into worry. I just don't know when Yichen will wake up. Uncle will be fine. Hu Jinyao glanced at Zhang Yichen. His face was very pale. He was lying there motionless. When Zhang Yichen was rescued, Hu Yangxiu wasn't there, so she could face him so calmly now. If Hu Yangxiu had seen that at that time, Hu Jinyao really couldn't guarantee that Hu Yangxiu would still be able to talk to him calmly like she was now. Zhang Yichen could have been fine. Why didn't he wake up now? One reason was that his internal organs were injured, and the other was that he had lost too much blood. Hu Jinyao couldn't forget the scene when the ruins were dug open and he saw Zhang Yichen and Su Qingsang. After Su Qingsang passed out, she had a fever and was dehydrated. Zhang Yichen had no choice but to cut his wrist and let Su Qingsang drink his blood. Su Qingsang was unconscious, so she didn't know about this. Then there was an aftershock. In order not to let her be hit, Zhang Yichen had been protecting her from above, but he didn't expect the wall to collapse because of the aftershock. Although there was a door to block it, the small door could no longer block the two of them. In order not to let Su Qingsang be hit, Zhang Yichen held the door and blocked most of the pressure. His back was hit, and because he had fed Su Qingsang his blood, she survived. When he was rescued, he was already unconscious because of excessive blood loss and the injury on his back. Even so, he still pressed his back against the door tightly, and his uninjured hand was still on the chair behind Su Qingsang. He formed a space in front of him and used this space to protect Su Qingsang. Hu Jinyao couldn't describe how shocked he was at that time. He knew that Zhang Yichen liked Su Qingsang, but he didn't expect Zhang Yichen to do this for Su Qingsang. He couldn't even be jealous of that scene. He only felt lucky and grateful. If it weren't for Zhang Yichen, Su Qingsang might have died. Hu Jinyao blamed himself. He blamed himself for not being by Su Qingsang's side, for not protecting her, and for not being by her side immediately. Instead, it was another man who was with her. He was indeed a little jealous and envious. But more than that, he felt lucky and grateful. If it weren't for Zhang Yichen, he would have lost Su Qingsang. He couldn't imagine what that scene would be like. Grandaunt, I'll take care of Uncle for a while. You go and rest first. No need. Hu Yangxiu waved her hand. He won't wake up so soon anyway. Besides, Su Qingsang needs you. She's asleep now. Zhang Yichen was rescued. The rescuers only told Hu Yangxiu that Zhang Yichen was buried to save someone, but they didn't say who he was saving. For Hu Yangxiu, it was normal for her son to do such a thing. He was a soldier, and he had the responsibility and obligation to walk in front of others. She just hoped that her son would wake up soon. There's really no need. I've already called Yichen's father. When the next batch of supplies arrives, we'll move him away from here first. By the way, you can move with Su Qingsang too. There are still aftershocks here. It's not safe. Okay. Hu Jinyao didn't object. He looked at Zhang Yichen, who was lying unconscious on the bed. He only hoped that he could wake up soon. Zhang Yichen didn't wake up even when the helicopter carrying supplies arrived the next day. Hu Yangxiu was really worried about him. Therefore, she first transferred Zhang Yichen to City N, which was closest to City C. City N was also affected by the earthquake, but it wasn't as serious as City C. It was just a reaction. Su Qingsang also moved with him. After a night's rest, her body had mostly recovered. She wanted to help, but how could Hu Jinyao agree? She was injured and her body hadn't recovered yet. She still needed someone to take care of her, so how could she save others? No matter what Su Qingsang said, Hu Jinyao didn't agree to let her stay. Not only that, but he also brought her onto the helicopter and followed her to City N. When they arrived in City N, he first arranged for Su Qingsang to have a full-body examination, especially a brain examination. After confirming that Su Qingsang was fine, he also asked her to be observed for a day. Su Qingsang was helpless, even though she felt that her body was fine. However, Hu Jinyao was too nervous, so she had to stay in the hospital. City North was very close to City C, but it wasn't the closest, so there weren't many injured people here. There were more people in the hospital than usual, but because of Hu Yangxiu, they were now in the military hospital, so it couldn't be as crowded as in other hospitals. Su Qingsang was much more energetic today. However, Hu Jinyao insisted that she stay in bed to rest. She felt that she had slept too much, but Hu Jinyao didn't think so. He always felt that only in bed could be considered rest. This made Su Qingsang feel very helpless. After lunch, Su Qingsang was going to take a nap. However, after she closed her eyes, she couldn't fall asleep. Just as she was about to ask Hu Jiniao if he wanted to rest for a while, she heard the sound of him going outside. Zhang Yichen woke up. Hu Jiniao heard the news when he delivered Su Qingsang's food. His ward was next to Su Qingsang's, which was also arranged by Hu Yangxiu. When Hu Jiniao went over, Zhang Yichen had just finished a bowl of porridge. His hand was still wrapped in gauze. His face was a little pale but much better than yesterday. Hu Yangxiu greeted him when she saw him. "Uncle." Hu Jiniao looked at Zhang Yichen with a complicated expression. When Zhang Yichen saw him, his lips moved, but when he saw Hu Yangxiu next to him, he didn't say what he wanted to ask. "Mom, I want to eat grapes. Go and buy some." "Okay." Hu Yangxiu hurried over because of Zhang Yichen's accident. Her eldest son and daughter both had tasks, so they couldn't come over immediately. As for Zhang Xinghua, he could only come at night. So, he was the only one here to take care of Zhang Yichen. Hearing that her son wanted to eat grapes, she immediately picked up her bag and walked out. "Then Jiniao, you, Grandaunt, you can go. I'll stay here and keep Uncle company. Sorry to trouble you." Su Qingsang was in the ward next door. She was fine. Hu Yangxiu knew that, so she wasn't too worried. She thanked Hu Jiniao and left. After she left, the ward fell silent. Zhang Yichen looked at Hu Jiniao, wanting to ask how Su Qingsang was. "I know what you want to ask. She's fine." Zhang Yichen's clenched fists loosened a little. Hu Jiniao saw that, but he couldn't tell how he felt. "You should have known that she would be fine when you saved her." Seeing that Zhang Yichen didn't say anything, Hu Jiniao added, "Thank you, Uncle." Zhang Yichen glanced at him. He looked very calm. But only he knew how many undercurrents were hidden under that calmness. "You're welcome. I know. It's too easy to thank you now." Hu Jiniao's voice was a little low. He looked at the gauze on Zhang Yichen's arm. The white gauze looked a little harsh against his wheat-colored skin. "But I still want to thank you. Because I'm her husband and you saved my wife. I thank you." That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.